And I'm here. Thank you. We'll call the meeting to order now. We'll start with public comments. Jennifer, were there any public comments submitted to the commission in writing before the meeting?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there anyone attending today who wishes to make any public comments? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the next agenda item, which are comments of the chair and individual commissioners. And I'd like to start with, as always, Commissioner Gifford.
Hate being first. So, but that's okay. This has been a really exciting month for CDOT and especially for Region 1. I think all of us who were able to attend, we're really grateful to Bob Hayes and Stacy Sellers for setting up tours of the Central 70 project before the cutover to admit traffic. And we're just really excited to see the progress that's been made and just kind of all the wonderful aspects of this project. So that was a big thrill. You go months and years sometimes talking about projects and worrying about the budgets on projects and hearing about the complications on project, but it really is fun, sort of years after the groundbreaking to see results on the ground. So that was really fun. And then we're kind of on the verge of starting another big, totally different kind of project with passing several resolutions yesterday to start moving the Burnham Yard acquisition and planning process forward. And I'm sorry, I won't be around to see that through as a member of the commission, but as a resident of Colorado, I will be watching closely and hopefully as an employee of the city of Denver, being able to participate to a certain extent in that process. So I'm really excited about that as well. And I think 2 big projects is probably enough for my comments for 1 month. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Stanton.
Thank you, Chair Stewart. I want to thank Julie George, Paul Jositis, Andy Carsian for helping me in a briefing this past week with the new Jefferson County commissioners. We covered a lot with them. Also met with Mayor Paul of Lakewood. And I want to mention, we discussed yesterday in our workshop with Jeff Sudemeyer and the team, we have 4% inflation now, commodities, steel, gas, everything is going up, which will affect us in the future at this very sensitive time as we're recovering from the COVID year. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to thank the CDOT staff from the director all the way down. I just continue to be amazed at the tremendous professionalism and the quality of the people we have within CDOT, their dedication. It has been a very difficult time for all of us the last year, and they've gotten through it in an amazing way. So I just want to again just reiterate how much I personally appreciate all the great work they've done. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brackey.
Great, thank you. I agree with Commissioner Gifford. It's been a really exciting month. And I want to say a huge thank you also for the opportunity to tour the Central 70 project. I mean, the word that I just keep using to describe it to people is just wow. I mean, wow, it is an amazing outcome of a project. The technology, the safety systems, all of it is just incredible. And, as someone who spent my career in transportation, it is just fascinating when we see these projects come forward. I think what struck me the most being out on the site is how beneficial the project will be in terms of knitting the neighborhoods back together and seeing that firsthand and seeing how that huge opportunity where infrastructure can really be part of community building and community connections. So I really was exciting to see that. It's also amazing to me to see the progress on North I-25. Heather Paddock and her team are just making amazing strides in getting that project delivered and really making a difference in Northern Colorado. So I want to keep the momentum going on North I-25 and appreciate everyone's patience during construction, but amazing to see that project coming to life as well. And I guess to me, the other super exciting progress that's been made this past month has been on the state transportation funding bill. To be able to see that and witness that be announced several weeks ago was just so thrilling to me. Again, we have been working on state transportation funding for over a decade, and we've had so many points where we've gotten further in the process only to have it not pan out. But this feels like it's the real deal, and it's going to go forward, and it's going to make such a transformational difference in our state. And I think that the bill represents so many diverse voices that have participated in the process to create it, listening from all parts of the state, all different perspectives, but to be there and to see the support from the business community, from the motor carriers, from different communities across our state, up and down the Front Range, it's really impressive. And so I know it's been a tremendous lift by the Director Liu, all the staff at CDOT that have worked on that. It truly is the biggest thing I think we'll see in transportation in so many years. So thank you for all of that work. I'm continuing to attend the regular meetings for Northern Colorado with the North Front Range MPO, North I-25 group. And again, it's great to see all of the progress happening both at the statewide level and with these regionally significant projects. One of the questions that I have heard from different meetings I've gone to is questions about what projects CDOT is intending to submit for the RAISE grants that are coming up this summer. And so if there's in the staff reports, if there's a way to share any information on that would be really helpful. And then on a fun note, to close out, I want to thank Commissioner Tebow for the recommendation on the Juniper Valley Ranch restaurant. My husband and I had a chance to go there the other night. It was fantastic. So thank you for the recommendations, and keep them coming. All right, thank you.
Thanks very much, Commissioner Brackey. Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I want to echo Kathleen's comments about Central 70. I have not spent my career in transportation, but it was a wow moment for me as well to see all the technology and the thoughtfulness that went into the Central 70 project, the attention to community as well as the transportation needs and the technology to make users safe. So that was just amazing for me. But I have also participated in a number of the greenhouse gas reduction listening sessions that Teresa Takushi and Rebecca White have been leading. And I really want to compliment them for threading the needle, listening to all perspectives, to accumulate a wisdom base, if you will, for moving forward in this fraught effort to address the greenhouse gas reduction requirements and the standing requirements for CDOT and the Transportation Commission to be continually repairing and improving our transportation system. This intersection between transportation and greenhouse gas reduction roadmap for Colorado is an area I've been extremely interested in, as many of you know. And it was great news to see the Ford company debut their electric pickup truck. Their price point and the features offered in this truck really promise to deliver to the suite of trucks that are being offered a fairly low price entry point and really improve the potential penetration of EVs in that large pickup truck driving sector of our public. So with that, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Vasquez. Vice Chair Hall.
Okay, get myself unmuted here. All right. I am just so envious of that opportunity you had to tour I-70. I was in the process when I first came on the commission, and I've been so excited about that project. I thought CDOT all along have done such a good job in finding a way to reunite those communities and rebuild the school and so many things they've done. So I would have loved to have been gone on that tour. So I'm looking forward to when we can do another tour and I can be there. I was able to join in on the Intermountain TPR with Zoom. Obviously, it makes it very easy. And then Chaffee County, you know, most all of my counties that I represent are in Region 3, but Chaffey County is in Region 5. So I was able to join Region 5 and join the Chaffey County County Commissioner information meeting, which was great. I really enjoyed it. And I'd like to thank John Lorme for the work he's done on the maintenance and the really worked on a way to make I-70, the Eisenhower Tunnel, and those two Vale Pass and those two mountain regions. Hopefully the maintenance will work really better the way he's worked at it. His enthusiasm and excitement about it is very catching. And so I'm excited about the changes were made. And of course, we have to address those today and some additional FTEs, but I really think it's going to be beneficial. Everybody in the state benefits when I-70 and Eisenhower Tunnel are open and operating. So I thank John for that very much. And that'll do it for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Hall. Next is Commissioner Zink.
Thank you and good morning. I've been to a few more county meetings and attended the STAC meeting last week. And so it's always great to get around, even if it's on Zoom. But more exciting was I got to visit the construction site for the interchange, for the 160/550 interchange, almost 2 weeks ago now. But it was the day that they were placing beams on the bridge section, which, turn these pillars into an actual bridge. And it's hard to even describe how big those things are. I mean, it's no Central 70, but it's huge. And to watch those people, two different cranes having to pick that thing up and set it up there. I've got pictures like crazy. And we had a good time. It was a beautiful day. And it's just, I stand there with my mouth open, just wow. So I hope even after my term is up after next month that I will get an opportunity to check out that project once in a while. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hickey.
Thank you, Chair Stewart. Good morning, all. I've attended most of the usual meetings. I couldn't attend the STAC meeting, but I did listen to the recording, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. I am really looking forward to the groundbreaking ceremony for the MAMSIP project, the Military Access Mobility and Safety Improvement Project, on June 2nd, and excited to see CDOT staff coming down for that. That project will improve efficient comings and goings from some of our military installations, which are so critical for our national safety and security. And so we are working on that with an eye towards, of course, increasing safety, but it's an important part of our community too, in the southeast part of Colorado Springs. And I think it's really especially important to us because of those improvements in that area, which will lift all boats, I think. I also have been happy to support and participate in discussions about how our exciting new funding bill will be finalized soon and how that will affect projects approved under the Pikes Peak RTA that have been really well supported now for nearly 20 years. And we want to look very carefully at how all of the state funding and state approval process will intersect with local decision making, just as all of us are looking at, because I think it can work well together. I think we can support each other, and my goal is for the entire District 9 to be fully integrated efficiently into the statewide and national economies. And our transportation systems are the arteries that are necessary for those important connections. And so that's my way of saying that we support that state funding, and I want to help us more fully understand how those processes will work together and support one another, and look forward to that conversation going forward. I think that's all I have for this month. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hickey. Commissioner Tebow.
Well, thank you and good morning to everyone. As I sit here in Pueblo, anticipating a 90-degree day, I get excited about the change in the weather. I'm also very excited about the fact that we hopefully will be meeting in person next month in June. While I've enjoyed the remoteness of our lives in some respects, they truly never replicate the live energy we get from each other and meeting at the headquarters. And so I'm also excited about joining the Region 2 South program staff. Next week, there's going to be a tour in parts of Southeast Colorado in the Lamar area and adjoining counties of some projects. And so I'm looking forward to jumping in a van and seeing how things are going, down there. So with that, I'll just sign off and say that when we do meet in June, I'll have other recommended restaurants in Southern Colorado for you all to join and enjoy your time here and get full. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Commissioner Tebow. I have to say that I took a trip to Pueblo earlier last year, and there was a recommendation for what was it called? The Pueblo Slammer that one of the CDOT people, oh my gosh, that was so great. And I would have never gone to that restaurant and I would have never ordered that had it not been a recommendation. And now anybody going to Pueblo, I always tell them, you have to go to this particular restaurant and try the Slammer. Don't be afraid of it. So I appreciate that. And finally, Commissioner Beatty, thank you.
There, got my mic on. I just want to have condolences. We had a sheriff deputy shot along 287 today and responding to a burglary, so they shut down 287 for a while. Just have those condolences for our community as hopefully he can recover. I also toured the I-70 Central 70 project. Echo all the comments that were made before about how good that project does look when it will be completed. It will really make a big difference in that part of Denver and open the traffic for all of Colorado as we pass through that area. Whether people are going through the state or whatever it is, that corridor is so critical to all of the state. After our initial guided tour, I did take privilege and go look at the stormwater handling area, the pumps and things to handle the 100-year flood event if that ever happens, so that doesn't flood. And I'm confident that that system will work. It's a highly engineered and backup systems to it. So I think they've done an excellent job in how they're handling all that. And if there's ever a fire in the covered area, that'll be collected separately to handle any waste or environmental impact. That'll be all handled very well. So that project is definitely a marvel, and I can see why other states are coming here to look at it. Other than that, I did participate with a local patrol group. They invited me to come have a lunch with them. And I sense some of their frustration because of the lack of funding that our maintenance crews get for doing maintenance, and all the strings and federal and state requirements and restrictions on how much work our own crews can do, and our focus on snow removal and that is very important during the the winter, but I've kind of felt we've shifted a little bit too much just to that sort of a focus, and we've kind of been shortchanging our maintenance workers and giving them the materials they need to be able to maintain our system with chip seals, crack seals, even just patching the potholes that are needed on a regular basis. We have legislative restrictions that we are getting increased so they can at least do a little bit more to keep up with the inflationary cost. As we mentioned about inflation and the cost of materials, our shift that we've seen just covering our personnel and our equipment has actually decreased the amount of materials we can actually put out to our people to do the work on the road. So I really hope with the new funding that's coming forward, Commission can really look at how we can improve our maintenance and preservation of our system and make sure we're getting out there and doing chip seals and crack seals and fixing potholes in the concrete and things. I just this morning again had complaint from a driver on High 76 because it's so rough and the potholes that they're patching with asphalt, but that's not good in concrete. I mean, there's so many factors, and as I see more and more restrictions put on by new legislation, it almost is hamstringing us the flexibility to really do what we need to preserve our system and address the environmental impacts and all those things. As our state's seen 700,000 people over the last 10 years move to the state, and then we're having groups say we need to not add any capacity. How do you do that and still serve the public when you have people moving into areas where there's not the infrastructure to handle that, or there's not alternatives to the existing infrastructure to handle the traffic? So we face a lot of conflicting pushes from the public, and we have to work to balance those and try to meet our environmental improvements that we need to make. And I think technology will help us there. We're not entirely there yet, but I think technology will help us a lot. But our roads, no matter what technology is out there, our roads still connect our communities. The central US, they've done studies that show communities connected by 4-lane highways have economic vitality. Those that are just on 2-lane highways have been economically disadvantaged throughout the entire central US. I think we see that somewhat. My district has high low income percentages in my counties. A lot of those communities are on just 2-lane state highways and have been dwindling away because they don't have the connective infrastructure that people want to have that connection with. So as we talk about environmental justice and community and economic justice throughout the country, we need to make sure that we serve all areas and not just always focus on the large metropolitan areas. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Commissioner Beatty. Appreciate your comments. So I have been corrected. It's not a slammer. It's Pueblo green chili slopper, which actually is more accurate in what I ate in Pueblo. And thank you, Rich, some more for correcting me. I knew when I said slammer, that wasn't quite right. It's the slopper. So if you ever go to Pueblo, ask for the Pueblo green chili slopper. You won't be disappointed. So thank you very much. So I want to say, starting with my report, that I have really enjoyed participating, listening in on the stack meetings. I learned so much from those. And it's Millburger Farms that has the slopper. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate that. It is a hamburger smothered in pork green chili. Oh, so good. Really appreciate sitting in on the stack meetings and learning so much. And one of the things that I learned that I already knew was how much people on this appreciate Commissioner Zink and all the work that she's done the last years that she's been on the commission, and how they will really miss her input and her leadership, and we will too. Don't want to get too teary-eyed about this, but really, she's a great mentor to all of us, and we are going to miss her, and we're going to miss the other commissioners who will be leaving in July. So just wanted to mention that. I got a chance to tour Central 70 as well. So I have a couple of things to say about that. Years ago, when I was in an elected office and went to conferences at the National League of Cities, the conference was in Boston and I got to tour the Big Dig. And that was an incredibly exciting opportunity for me. And I know this isn't quite as dramatic as the Big Dig, but it reminded me of it. The enthusiasm, the innovation, the consideration for the community, all of that reminded me of that. And I feel very fortunate to have had the chance to have that field trip before it's open to the public, and I'm eager to see how it works. I'm so impressed with the CDOT team and the Kiewit team, and I'm going to call out Bob Hayes. Bob Hayes is project manager, and Bob Hayes is a Broomfield kid who was a stellar athlete while my kids were in high school, and Bob brought Broomfield to many championships in the basketball championships through the years. He and his brother Bill were incredible athletes for the city and county of Broomfield, and I just want to call out how exciting it was to see him again as an adult and being in charge of this massive project and the good work that he's doing. And it was great to catch up with him. I appreciate that. Also want to say thank you to Shoshana, to Director Liu, who came to Broomfield last week to talk about the Revitalizing Main Street program. Broomfield's received a few of those grants, and Shoshana and her team are going around the state and looking at some of the Main Streets projects and talking about how these kinds of monies can improve local opportunities. And I really appreciate her taking the time and going in and learning a little bit more about Broomfield. You know, we're the smallest county in Colorado, not the smallest in population, but the smallest geographically. Really appreciate the attention that she gave to Broomfield. And then finally, I want to say how impressed I was yesterday with the presentation that we got from our CDOT historian. And we had a wonderful presentation about the historic bridges in Colorado. I hope that that's somewhere on our website so people can look at it. Pretty extraordinary. The idea of not only the functioning of the bridges, but the architectural diversity through the many years of Colorado being a state, and some of the beautiful art forms that some of those bridges take. So really appreciated that workshop. Sometimes we forget, at least I forget, how vast the work is that we do at CDOT, and really appreciate knowing more about CDOT every month that we have these workshops, and love to have the workshops peppered with interesting one-off, sort of like the historical bridges workshop that we had yesterday. So thank you very much. That's my report, and now I'll turn it over to Executive Director Shoshana Liu for her report.
Thanks, Chair Stewart, and exciting to kind of reflect on the past month, because it's really been a momentous few weeks in the statewide debates around transportation. I think folks have heard updates and know at this point that Senate Bill 260 passed the Senate earlier this week and goes on to the House next. So really just a Herculean effort by an awful lot of people leading up to the progress so far and the progress that's yet to come. And, you know, just a specific shout out to the folks on the CDOT staff who have been having a heck of a few months doing technical assistance on the packages and working with, you know, all the sponsors and stakeholders, and, you know, trying to walk a very fine line between, you know, the many different equities that come to bear in that bill. And, you know, just a particular shout out to Rebecca, Jeff, Sally, Kay, Herman, Andy. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing people, but just it's been an incredible team effort. Working together with our partners at other agencies, and Sarah Hughes, who's been coordinating across the agencies as we work with the legislators and others. So the team next week should be exciting on that front, and we'll see where it goes, and hopefully we have some good news on it next month. kind of below the radar, many of our other legislative efforts are making kind of more subdued progress as well. The very heavy lift project limit bill is going through, and that was, for those who are unfamiliar, bit of a tense but ultimately very successful negotiation with the contractors to raise the limit for in-house work and maintenance operations across the state. So it will raise the amount of work that can be done in-house from 150,000 to 250,000, which will give particularly John Lermay and his team across the state and all of the regions and their teams, more flexibility, especially with some of those rural projects that are harder to do out of house and are much more easily done in-house. Few other things passing as well, but those are just a few that I wanted to note. And folks who've heard a lot about the tremendous progress on projects already, I hate to be the fifth voice talking about how neat it is to see the progress on Central 70, but I'll do it anyway. And a big thanks again to Bob and Stacia and Keith and others who have just worked awful hard to get to this point and who've done a really good job helping the public see what it means in reality as it comes together. I had the privilege of going there with the mayor yesterday, and it was just really neat to see the city team be able to kind of look at it and visualize what it will mean for reconnecting the city and for the neighborhoods and for sort of life in and around Denver. So that was really a treat. And have had the chance to see it a few times in the last few weeks at various iterations. And every time you go, there's a new feature that's been added. And, you can see it going from a hole in the ground to a very serious piece of infrastructure in real time. And that's been exciting to watch. I think likewise progress on projects elsewhere. We've had a very busy month getting projects started on various parts of the mountain corridor. There's just a lot of simple, good repair work happening, on pretty much every stretch of I-70 westbound. Ranging from fixing a structurally deficient culvert west of the tunnel to fixes on Vail Pass to just other segments where there's a lot of restriping and pavement improvement and just the simple things that need to happen every summer, given the tough beating that it takes in the winter. So that's happening with some traffic impacts, but a lot of care to make sure that the corridor is still drivable in every respect. Other projects taking off as well. The timing blurs, but we've gotten several of our projects on US 50 underway. The Little Blue Canyon project, which I know there's been a lot of discussion about, is happening with closures going relatively well so far, thanks to the team for all of the outreach that they did ahead of that to kind of work with communities ahead of time. And similarly, projects elsewhere across the state. I think likewise, we're rearing to go on the Senate Bill 267 Year 3 project, hopefully sooner rather than later. So really have the next class of projects getting ramped up. And I will end on the note of reiterating what Chair Stewart said about the exciting visit that we had to talk about the Main Street projects. We've had some really good conversations with communities who have been the recipients of these grants so far, and to talk about sort of what the lessons learned are and how we can think about those differently, and just really getting some nice feedback on what a difference it's made, especially during COVID, in some of the smaller communities in particular, to be able to work with us to keep their economies thriving and the kind of quality of place rich during this tough time. So that's been neat, and stay tuned for more as we rapidly move through the process of evaluating applicants for these stimulus projects approved by the legislature. Thanks.
Very much for that report. We'll go now to the Chief Engineer's report. Steve?
Recently, one of my predecessors, Tim Harris, loaned me a book titled Chief Engineer by Erica Wagner. This is a biography of Washington Rebling, who was the builder of the Brooklyn Bridge. It's a very interesting biography, but beyond the personal story, it also includes a story of how the bridge was developed and built. It's got everything an infrastructure geek could want: political intrigue, funding malfeasance, heroic technical achievement, tragedy, and redemption. In one notable episode, the construction was marred by a fire in one of the caissons. A caisson is an underwater structure where they pump air in to keep the river water out, and it allows the workers to excavate the river bottom. because the caisson's filled with high pressure, oxygen rich air, the fire would smolder after they thought it was out. So after days of trying to extinguish the fire, the project team was forced to flood the caisson, and it threatened the entire project. And as I was reading that, I thought I had troubles here at CDOT. Flooding was a gamble that paid off, and they were able to overcome that project. And 150 years later, that bridge is as strong and as beautiful as ever. The details of the management of that bridge and much of the inspection and quality assurance that Roebling did working on that bridge are amazingly similar to what we still do at CDOT. Over the past couple weeks, I've had the pleasure of assembling a pile of project records in response to a Colorado Open Records request. These records are stored in a system called Site Manager, which was originally programmed decades ago. Let's just say the system has some quirks. Beyond the quirks, however, the project records the system contains are great. Some of the projects I reviewed were over a decade old, with the project staff long retired. However, the records they left behind are clear and detailed. The change orders are remarkably descriptive. This speaks well of our CDOT construction culture. You have considerable expertise at documenting construction. While we've progressed from Roebling's bound notebook record keeping to a computer system originally written in the 1990s, we recognize that Site Manager is pretty clunky, particularly when looking at a whole portfolio of projects. This past winter, Paul Turtle of our IT group assembled a quick action team to explore options to update this construction documentation system. After reviewing a number of options, the team has settled upon a path forward, and we are preparing to start that transformation. The new system will dovetail closely with the on-track pre-construction project management system that we're currently in the process of deploying. And this should allow us to be able to use our construction records much more quickly and efficiently. We believe that upgrading this system will help us in our efforts of transparency and reporting on the construction side, and also make it easier for our construction staff to document project work and focus on the task of project management, inspection, and testing rather than on massaging an archaic computer system. So thanks to Paul and the team for working on this important project, and hopefully in the coming 6 months or year, we'll get it on the street. So thank you.
Thank you for your report. Next, we'll go to HPT Director's report, Nick Farber.
There I am. Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate it. So along with, actually in regards to Steve's recommendation, I also about the Brooklyn Bridge, I also recommend David McCullough's book on the bridge as well. It's fascinating to hear about. He died, the chief engineer died on the project because of, he got cut with a rusty piece of metal, and then his son took it over, and then the son got carbon dioxide poisoning because they were so deep in the caissons, and his wife took it over. It's an amazing book. It's an amazing history about the bridge and how it was built back in the mid-1800s, 1860s, 1870s, no, 1870s, 1890s. I digress. So along with putting together Burnham Yard, we've been really busy talking to the E470 about our future back office procurement. I met with their board in a special session on April 22nd to discuss our goals for a future back office procurement and how they weren't meeting our current goals, and possibly on perhaps working together or just working together on a procurement. I also met with the Floyd Hill Funding Gap PLT last month to discuss initial and modeling results from our traffic and revenue study and what we Funding Gap PLT in the coming weeks. I also met with the I-25 North Coalition to discuss our unsolicited proposal process and update the members on where we were in the process regarding the ROTUS proposal, and give them an update on our TIFIA loan process. In regards to the TIFIA loan process, we were actually approved by credit committee, or will be approved by credit committee this week, and will be likely moved to the creditworthiness phase in the coming week or so. They indicated to us last week that I think we could still close by early fall, but knowing how they work, I would imagine it's going to be, I would say, late fall before we get to close on the TIFIA loan on I-25 North. Along with speaking to you a few weeks ago, some of you on on Burnham Yard individually a few weeks ago. I presented to the legislature's Joint Budget Committee on a $7.5 million loan to CDOT for Burnham Yard. The main theme of their comments were around transparency in the planning process and transparency in our financing process. I actually just got off with the Economic Development Commission, where they just approved the interagency agreement between CDOT and OEDIT, which I'll be presenting to you in the next few minutes. I also want to thank Kay Hruska, Lillian Bourne, Piper Darlington, Ray Lee Sluga, and Cynthia Montour for yesterday. As soon as the commission approved the interagency agreement between HPT and CDOT, they started the process to move the $10 million from CDOT to HPT and then HPT over to our trustee, Zions Bank. And that happened in record time and in order to get us to close next week. So I'm really happy that they worked together like clockwork to get that funding out the door and ready for close. And that's all I have in terms of a director's report. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks very much, Nick, and thanks for the workshop yesterday. We appreciate all of that good information. Thank you. We have Andy Carcian next with the state legislature report. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'll just give you guys a brief update on where we're at. Shoshana spoke to some of the larger bills going on, right? She said that our project limit bill that has passed through both chambers, it's sitting on the governor's desk. We're excited to have him sign that soon. Of course, the funding bill passed through the House, was amended, got some good amendments on there that helped clarify some of the environmental practices for CDOT moving into the future. Also, the multimodal distributions came out well, and we're looking forward to the debate in the House, ready for it. On Senate Bill 263, this is an outdoor advertising bill that passed through a Senate committee. If you remember, this is a bill that we need to run in order to make sure that if a circuit court upholds the lawsuit against CDOT, all of our regulations on billboards and signs along state highways are not overturned. And so we're creating a more efficient, clear way of determining permitting for billboards around the state. That passed out of the Senate committee 5-0 and is on the consent calendar in the Senate. So that will move through the Senate, and we've got it going into the House. Funny enough, we had a couple of sponsors, I found out last night, placed on the bill by accident because it was Representative McCluskey and Representative McKean, the minority leader. And obviously we were very excited to hear that those two were going to be sponsoring our little outdoor advertising bill, but they were placed on it by accident. They were supposed to be on the funding bill instead. So that's all right. We still have some good sponsors interested in our outdoor advertising, Representative Byrd as well as Representative Van Winkle in the House. So not quite as much cachet as the minority leader, but we'll take them. On 1303, it's also up in committee this afternoon. CDOT will be testifying in support. This is the greenhouse gas, quantifying greenhouse gases on our construction materials that we use in our projects on highways, our highway projects. That's up in committee like I said, this afternoon, and we'll be testifying in favor. And then we're also working with the JBC on helping to prioritize some of the federal stimulus funds that may come down to the state for the DUI enforcement that passes through CDOT and goes down to the local governments that we've talked about for many years as well. There was a bill that we, just a variety of other things that we did over the week very briefly, made sure that a bill regarding personal identifying information didn't interfere with our back office tolling processes, and we got clarification that we're good on that. And then your Office of Policy and Government Relations staff, we're all over the state this year. We dealt with, or this week, we dealt with fences in Region 4, tricked out golf carts in Castle Rock, answering questions on that. We had a rumble strip issue going up Boulder Canyon that we had to address. We had signage for truck traffic going through Golden. That was winding up in the neighborhoods as opposed to Coors. Air brakes coming down the hill in Georgetown, as well as an irate legislator that left us all some pretty colorful messages in regards to the Little Blue project. But it turns out he had misinformation, and so all of it wasn't all of his ranting was for naught. So, but we were responsive and on top of it nonetheless. So happy to answer any questions, but that kind of gives you a sense of what we've done and where we're at.
Does anyone have any questions for Andy?
Just one, Andy. Won't you be glad when we get the little blue done?
I think Shoshana and Goolsby will be a lot happier than I am. I think they're taking the brunt of it all.
It has certainly been entertaining, we'll say that for sure, but it's going to be wonderful when it's done.
Well, thanks for your report, Andy. We appreciate it. We're going to go to John Cater next, FHWA Division Administrator. John?
All right. Well, thank you. I guess I'd like to start by echoing many of the other comments about the Central 70 project and the open house that was held last weekend. I thought it was a tremendous event. It's exciting to go to a transportation project and see so many members of the public there who are so excited about seeing what's been done, seeing what we've accomplished, and to be curious about how it all works, and everything from the murals to the the tunnel. Everything was just fascinating. One thing that I was especially impressed with was there was about 25 booths along the way there, and they explained everything from the history of the settlement of the neighborhood to the environmental process to how crash cushions work and how rebar, why we have rebar. I mean, there's a whole mix of things about transportation projects and this project in particular. I thought it was tremendous. I just thought it was tremendous. Well done by Stacia Sellers. Bob Hayes is the project engineer, and just the whole team. Just very, very well done. So very, very excited to see. It reminded me a few years ago when we did the bridge move on Pecos, just a few miles west of there. The number of people from the surrounding area just came out to watch it, and so I think people are fascinated by transportation. I think the more we can do like this to get people out and get them to touch it, feel it, see it, I think it helps build support for what we're doing. So great effort there. The other thing I want to talk about is safety. And we talk a lot about safety. I just want to talk about, we've talked a lot about all the things that are going on this month. This has been a crazy last month, but there's been a lot going on in the safety area too. I just want to make you aware of, our numbers still aren't great, but there's a lot going on in that area. And I think it's good sometimes to see what's all going on. So we had about a month ago, we had a workshop on developing the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which is how we focus some of the federal money on improving safety and on improvements. And we had California, Michigan, and Washington sat down with us at CDOT virtually to kind of talk to what they've done, lessons learned, successes, failures, and things we can do going forward to be better at our approach to safety. We had a Pedestrian Safety Action Plan webinar, and that was, again, brought together multiple local governments, federal agencies, pulling together again to focus on pedestrian safety challenges and how local communities can develop action plans to better focus on improving safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other non-motorized users. We had a first responder committee developed, and the goal there is to reduce the number of folks hit who are first responders, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's CDOT, whether it's local government, whoever it happens to be, to improve safety in that regard. So it's related to our TIM, Traffic Incident Management Program. And again, multiple folks from multiple parts of the state: Denver Fire, Denver West Towing, Loveland Police, Grand Junction Communications, CDOT, on and on and on. But again, multiple units of government working together to try to solve that problem. Of course, we had Remembrance Day at CDOT a few weeks ago. And again, I say this every year, but I think it's a tremendous effort that we have here in Colorado to focus on the risk that goes to the folks who are out there on the project, not only the project inspectors, but the construction staff and so forth, and on the risks that motorists are taking on when they drive through a construction zone. And so a great event. Hopefully there are no more new names to add to the monument, but broadly speaking, it's a great way to focus attention on the need for safety in work zones. So that's a great event. And then finally, another twist on safety is middle of March, we had a tanker crash up in the work zone on I-25 south of US 34, Loveland area. And so we did after action group came together to do an after action report. Is what's the lessons learned? What caused the event? How could we respond better? What went well? What didn't go so well? And it's great to see it happen. And again, we're pulling together, again, multiple agencies, it's state, federal, local, coming together to focus on this and how we can get better. So a lot of good things going on in safety. It's one of those things, our work is not done by any means, but a lot of good stuff going on there. So, but again, congratulations to the team on the Central Levy open house. That was tremendous of that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, John. Now we'll go to Vince Rogowski for the stack report. Vince.
Good morning, everyone. We had our stack meeting last week, and I want to thank the commissioners that were able to attend and the input that they provided also. One of the things that we're beginning to talk about is the fact that both the commission meeting and the stack meeting will return to in-person meetings in June, but we'll continue to support a remote participation for those people who can't come or are unwilling to come because of what they perceive in terms of safety. We had a presentation from Andy Carcian about Senate Bill 260 in terms of a real definition of what the bill is. And the bill proposes a number of new mechanisms to generate additional transportation funding for CDOT, municipalities, and counties. The bill also directs an alternative multimodal investment and includes a provision that would require governments to do enhanced level of planning, analysis, community engagement, and monitoring for road expansion and projects, including the consideration of greenhouse gases. We seem to be hearing a lot about greenhouse gases in just about everything we're doing these days. And then we had a stack discussion about that. And the stack debated the inclusion of funding for greenhouse gas emission mitigation and the long-range planning requirements to consider its reduction. Some feel it threatens to infringe upon air quality regulations that currently exist at the federal level. Local control was also particularly a hot point of dissent, with a lot of concern over what is seen as possible infringement over land use decisions and authority. CDOT is expressly in favor of inclusion of land use in the bill and provides it lacking prior and long-range planning in the previous sessions. CDOT has expressly affirmed that its legislation testimony for the bill intend to facilitate cooperation conversations so that neighboring locals can make land use plans that work together, and that it is not the intent to implement an overarching statewide land use policy or to supersede authority in any way. CDOT affirmed that the 260 would not affect projects that are already selected in the regional plan authority. The multimodal option would receive an early lump sum distribution, appropriations, and maintain an 85 and 15% split between local and state programs. Also being considered are match requirements and improvements to the upfront planning with CDOT on selection of projects. And it'll affect whatever capacity improvements can be completed in rural areas, and capacity improvements in rural areas would not necessarily affect the urban areas. CDOT expects the bill to pass, and as we heard just now, that this particular bill has passed the House last week and is in the Senate now. Interestingly enough, time does go fast, and the fact that we're already a year into this new 2045 plan, which means that in 3 years, we're going to have to approve a 2050 plan. And so we had a presentation on a debrief of what all the procedures and the things we did to get to the 2045 plan. And that was very interesting. And one of the things that really stood out is CDOT's participation in engaging the locals in all of the counties of Colorado in terms of getting input and what they wanted, what they could do, what they couldn't do, and what are the major priorities in each of the counties in terms of transportation. And a desire was expressed to have an earlier coordination of identifying candidate projects for prioritization. We had an update about the greenhouse gas rulemaking and policy directive. And staff reviewed recent stakeholder engagements and announced a delay of several weeks expected to make the greenhouse gas rulemaking schedule, resulting in the elements being considered in the Senate Bill 260. Interest in this is expressed to know that the potential impact and use of 100-year climate forcing calculations for methane, equivalent by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, versus the 20 to 25-year baseline used in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Staff agreed to come back and give us more information about what this means and what the greenhouse gas budget is. As you had and were very interested and amazed about some of the things in terms of historic bridges. And that was a great presentation that STAC also received. And one of the things that it points out to is we live in Colorado, but sometimes we don't know even some of the historic things about where we are locally in terms of what's going on or what has gone on in the area around us. For example, when we had the bridges and we talked about the Red Cliff Bridge, and that was about 200 feet above the river, one of the things that I remember is the fact that I had a presentation or a gathering that talked about the history of Blue Mesa Reservoir. And Blue Mesa Reservoir, prior to it filling with water, there was a bridge there that was about 300 feet above the water, above the base area. And that bridge is still there, even though it's covered by water, because one of the presenters was able to get somebody who had a sonar equipment, and they were able to let that down and be able to view the sonar image of the bridge, which is still there and still has the side railings on the bridge. And so the thing of it is nobody ever knew that until it started to be brought up in sort of our history discussion. And so we need to look at our local history and what's going on about what happened around us. And one of the things that was also amazing is the area covered by Blue Mesa was a fishing mecca. And there were so many resorts along the river, Gunnison River, that were occupied by many people who got there by rail and used it for their vacation in terms of fishing. We had a presentation on the Central 70 project and the update, and it really is an amazing project. And so when you look at some of the pictures and some of the things that the way the area that's been completed, and when you're going to have the mile high shift, it's going to be very interesting. And it really does, when it's going to be completed, connect the communities with this cover over I-70. Again, I said that STAC will be meeting in person at its June meeting, and CDOT's going to be sending out requests for information to each of the STAC members in terms of how many people will attend that particular meeting and how many people will be on a virtual Zoom. A request was made also to discuss in the future at STAC meetings the topic of what's called induced demand. And people want to know, okay, define what induced demand means. And what as discussions talked about in terms of the result of increased traffic volume due to roadway improvements. And so some question whether the concept is used correctly, sometimes implying that if we don't improve the roadway capacity, demand will be dissipated. And so It's an interesting thing. So we want to have more discussion about what that term induced demand really means. And with that, that is my report. And hopefully we'll all excuse me, we'll all be able to get together and see each other next month at the TC meeting, which will be in person also.
Thanks very much for your report. We're going to go on to agenda item 10 now, which is acting on the consent agenda. And there are 5 pieces, 5 proposed resolutions on the consent agenda. Proposed resolution number 1 is to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 15th, 2021. Proposed resolution number 2 is an IGA approval for expenditures over $750,000. Proposed resolution number 3 is the disposal of I-76 and Pecos. Proposed resolution number 4 is FY22 maintenance list, and proposed resolution number 5 is revised resolution to rename Stapleton Drive. Are there any questions about these 5 consent agenda proposals?
Not just make a comment. I don't want to
Yes.
actually pull it off the consent agenda, but in the minutes, on the very first page of the minutes where we have a meeting of the Bridge Enterprise, we should be addressed as BE directors and not commissioners. So it's just a little technicality, but fix it, okay?
Hey, thank you. I think it's okay to have us just have a correction of that and leave it on the consent agenda. Thanks for that catch. What are we going to do without you? Somebody's going to have to step into those big shoes. All right. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 5 items on the consent agenda.
So
Gary
move
Beatty.
to do the consent agenda.
Gary Beatty, I second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. Is there anyone who opposes this motion to approve? Or anyone who wishes to abstain? I'll just ask for a vote in approval. Please vote in approval of the proposed resolution, proposed motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And so that's a unanimous approval of the consent agenda. The next item on the agenda is number 11, discuss and act on proposed resolution number 6, which is adopt modified ESB rules. And this comes on the heels of a workshop that we had yesterday. It's Greg Deal and Natalie Lutz. Is there a presentation on this?
Just a quick couple of speaking points, Commissioner, about this. If that's
all right.
To echo your sense, we appreciate the dialogue with the Small Business Committee yesterday, where we were able to dive a little deeper in this. But just for to recap and for the entire commission, just to recap the intent of CDOT's Emerging Small Business Program as it's stated in statute. The primary intent of this program, and this program is under the purview of the commission, is to increase opportunities for eligible small businesses to perform primarily as subcontractors, but also as prime contractors on its highway construction and professional contracting. And the intent is with that increased competition that we're lowering the cost of Colorado on its transportation projects. As we recapped yesterday, on September 17th, 2020, the Transportation Commission authorized staff to commence rulemaking for the Emerging Small Business Program, and particularly looking to shore up that program's ability to increase opportunities at the prime contractor level. Just a summary of the key changes. A lot of them were administrative in nature. We re-indexed the numbering to make the format a little more user-friendly. There was some streamlining around certification and administrative requirements, but the big change, and this is a lot of what we discussed last night, was the introduction of a third level, a small business enterprise level, to complement the existing 2 levels that are already in the program. The rules now set forth 3 size standards that will be eligible based on, and these are based on the Small Business Administration size standards, with an overall cap that parallels what's in effect with the DBE program. Based on a lot of industry input, we wanted to make sure that the program benefits will be tailored according to those specific size standards to ensure that the benefits that are really intended for those lower two size standards are not usurped by the introduction of this new larger SBE level. The hearing officer has further modified the proposed changes to the Emerging Small Business Program based on public testimony and written comments that we received, and our team and staff are recommending that the Transportation Commission adopt the proposed changes to the Emerging Small Business Program rules, at which point they would become effective on July 15th this summer.
Thank you very much, Greg. Are there any comments or questions before we have a motion?
This is Commissioner Hall. As chairman of that committee, Greg, I appreciate all the work you've done on it. I think it's beneficial. I think anything we can do to help small businesses become even larger and more productive. So thank you for that. And I move the approval of resolution number 6.
I actually have a comment that I'd like to make too before we do that. And then I will second Commissioner Hall's request. So Madam Chair, what's the order of how I can do that?
Please, you can go ahead and make a comment now and then offer your second on the motion.
One, I really would like to commend the staff for the great work they've done in pushing this forward. I think it is an improvement in what we're doing, and it will create great opportunities for some of our Colorado small and diverse businesses. So I'm very pleased about the direction of all of this. The added comment I would make is I would encourage the staff to continue pushing the envelope as far as we can push it within the bounds of federal, state, and other regulatory requirements. As I heard yesterday, that we do have limits, so we can't just go unabound and do what we'd like to do. But I do want to encourage you, from my standpoint as a commissioner, to continue to push us hard, and you have my total support to try and push that envelope. So I think what you've done is really terrific. I really applaud it. And then I do second Commissioner Hall's recommendation that we approve their request.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, is there any one voting in opposition of this motion to approve? Is there anyone on the commission wishing to abstain from this vote? All right, seeing none, this is passed. The chair calls it as passed unanimously in approval of proposed resolution number 6. Thank you very much. The next item is discuss and act on proposed resolution number 7, which is adopt FY 2022, FY 2025 statewide transportation improvement program, the STIP. And I'll go to Jamie Collins.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chair. I am here to request your adoption of the FY 22 to 25 STIP. We had a public involvement period that was opened in early April and closed last Friday on the 14th. We did not receive any comments from the general public. I did receive some comments and corrections from FHWA and FTA, as well as from Commissioner Brackey. And I believe we have addressed all of those comments to the best that we can at this point. Some of the updates to the document that you probably want to be aware of. Well, first of all, I will be posting the final document once you have approved this as the commission. And then we will forward it on to FHWA and FTA for their final approval. But some of the updates that I did make to the narrative include adding a brief summary of the COVID-19 stimulus funding that we received from the Fed, from Congress, as well as I did update the I-25 North project summary that is included in the accomplishments section of the narrative. And I did add a summary section to the document, the entire document itself, for the public involvement that summarizes the comments that we received, as well as from the public hearing, etc. There is one last little thing that I would like to request of Executive Director Liu. Last night, I did send the self-certification document to Alexis. And if you could look that over and sign that, I will include that in the final document when we post it online. And other than that, I'm hoping, oh, I do want to give a shout out. Last year, we had some issues with the transit projects not being included or being included incorrectly, etc. I would really like to thank the staff in DTR for helping me get all of the transit information correct this year and included in the STIP document, as well as I would like to give a shout out to all of the MPOs and to the CDOT region planning staff, because I think this year has been an outstanding effort on all of our parts to make sure that everything in the STIP is correct and how we want it to look for the public.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Commissioner Brackey.
Great, thank you so much. And I first want to acknowledge all of the work by the CDOT staff to develop the STIP. I know it's very complicated and there's a lot of interconnected parts that roll up from the MPOs. And so I know this was no easy task to put all of this together. So I appreciate all of the work, and I appreciate you hearing my comments and concerns and integrating those into the process. It sounds like some of the things, the questions that I have around the interface between the tip and the tips and the STIP and some of that complexity is something that we're going to need to work on going forward. It's not something that's specific to this document. So I just think it's important to acknowledge why the STIP is so important in so many, because it serves multiple different purposes right now. And one of the things that it does, so that everybody knows, one of the reasons that this is so important is that in order for many projects, particularly local agency projects, to submit for federal funding, the project has to be acknowledged in the STIP. And so if your project isn't in the STIP, you can't apply for federal money, and then you end up in this, what we call chicken and egg problem, where you can't get money, and because you can't get money, you can't get in. So you end up in this loop. And so I just want to acknowledge and appreciate the staff work by CDOT to look into that. I realize it also connects with the work with FHWA and our federal partners and our MPOs. Hopefully that is something that could get addressed over time to make it easier for all of us to support local agencies that are trying to bring forward projects and help them be have access and be competitive in federal funding processes. So again, I support this STIP that's moving forward and hope that we can continue that the conversations that are more structural in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Commissioner Brackey, any other comments or questions before we take a motion to approve? All right, motion is in order.
I so move the STIP.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Is anyone on the commission wishing to vote in opposition? Anyone on the commission wishing to abstain from the vote? All right, thank you. The chair calls this as unanimous approval of the STIP. Thank you, Jamie, for your hard work on this and everyone who participated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is number 13, discuss and act on proposed resolution number 8, which is the 11th budget supplement of FY 2021. That's Jeff.
Good morning. The 11th supplement includes several items this month. The first item is a request to approve $500,000 in additional bridge construction funding to the Region 1 Bridge Deck Rehab and Fiber Wrap project. Costs on this project increased after going to after it was determined that additional working days would be needed to complete the project, And there were also increases, unanticipated increases in the pricing on steel bridge plank. The second item in the supplement is a request to approve the programmatic allocation of fiscal year 22 Innovative Mobility Program funds. This allocates the previously approved Innovative Mobility Program budget of 10.15 million, and it allocates those funds as outlined by Kay Kelly in workshop last month, with about 2.4 million allocated to mobility services programs and projects, 3.25 million to mobility technology, and 4.5 million to electrification and energy. And then the final set of items in the supplement this month is a request to approve changes to the previously approved Senate Bill 267 projects and amounts to align with the updated year 3 267 list presented to the commission last month. This includes updated amounts for both highway and transit projects, as well as the incorporation of other projects advanced from the 10-year plan. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'd request you consider a motion to approve.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, looking for a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Is there anyone on the commission who's voting in opposition to this motion? Is there anyone on the commission who wishes to abstain from the vote? All right, seeing none, the chair calls this as unanimous approval of resolution number 8. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is discuss and act on proposed resolution number 9, which is the 10th budget amendment of FY 2021. This is Jeff again.
Thank you. And Jennifer has the resolution up. I want to note that we made a slight modification to this resolution. I noted yesterday that we had missed the actual references to the FTE positions because typically we are talking dollars in a budget amendment, not dollars and positions. So we have simply added the references to the FTEs, which you are also approving as part of this resolution. So again, the amendment this month includes first an amendment to create 16 new FTE positions for a new maintenance patrol serving the I-70 mountain corridor from EJMT to Vail Pass. In addition to approving the 16 positions in this resolution, the amendment will allocate 2.4 million from the TC program reserve to the maintenance program areas. The second amendment encapsulated in the resolution creates 9 new FTE positions for the maintenance apprenticeship program and reallocates 1 million from TC program reserve to the maintenance program areas. The third amendment effectuates a loan to the HPTE under the tolling equipment finance agreement. That's a loan of $4 million for the I-25 South Gap project. This results in the reallocation of 4 million from TC program reserve to HPTE express lanes operations. And then the fourth and final amendment reallocates 19.5 million from strategic projects to TC program reserve as repayment for a program reserve loan extended back in January to the State Highway 21 and Research Parkway interchange project in Region 2. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I would request again a motion to approve.
Thanks very much, Jeff. And we had a workshop on this yesterday with lots of questions and answers. Are there any further questions or comments for Jeff before we entertain a motion? All right, seeing none, motion is in order.
I move that we approve.
I move to approve.
Okay.
I'll second it. I'll defer to Commissioner Beatty, but I'll second.
Thank you very much. Further discussion? All right, seeing none, is there any member of the commission who wishes to vote against this motion? Is there any member of the commission that wishes to abstain from the vote? All right, seeing none, chair calls this as a unanimous approval of resolution number 9. Thank you very much. Next is discuss and act on proposed resolution number 10, which is the adoption of the updated policy directive 2.0 CDOT values. Herman?
Yes, Chair, thanks. I'm going to turn this over to our Chief Human Resource Officer, Christy, to talk this through. She spent so much time working on this. I want her to be able to explain it, and she'll do a much better job than I could. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. So a few months ago, I let you know that we were working on updating our CDOT values policy as part of our EDI initiatives, our equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives. So you have a copy of the red line there in your packet, and if it would be helpful for Jennifer to bring that up on the screen, we can certainly do that too. So we had a number of employees involved in these updates. So we worked with the Employee Steering Committee, that's our EDI Steering Committee, our Executive EDI Working Group, our Regional Civil Rights Managers, as well as our full executive team. Significant partnership with the policy office through Natalie, and also with Greg and Anna and the Civil Rights Business Resource Center. So the language that is in the new policy really incorporates the language that was developed back in 2017. In fact, we have kept the actual values statements mostly the same, those values definitions. We have just enhanced these by adding language that is really informed by the executive order from the governor's office, from the universal policy that was developed by the Department of Personnel Administration, and also by our own commitment to EDI statement that was developed by our EDI steering committee. So we did add the word accountability in here. We added that to our excellence value word. We kept our acronym of SPICER. That's been popular among our employees. And we have kept that original language. We have just added this. And we felt strongly that EDI in particular is bedrock to everything that we do. And rather than having a separate value of diversity, that we just wanted to include EDI language in every single one of our values. So I'll just sort of briefly run through these. So with our safety value, this acknowledges that a safety-focused workplace is also a workplace that is free from discrimination and harassment. And with our people value, we have really expanded that to note that it's not just our internal people, our employees, this is also the people that we serve throughout Colorado. And from an internal perspective, we really foster a speak up culture. We want our employees to feel like they can fully participate in the workplace. And that is how we can best serve Colorado communities. Integrity. This reflects our own commitment to transparency and to be inclusive and collaborative as we develop policies, both internal and external. Customer service, this notes both our internal and external customers that as employees and staff of CDOT, we are each other's customers, as well as, of course, the people we serve throughout Colorado, and that we will be intentionally inclusive in our public processes, and that we will honor Colorado's cultural and environmental integrity. Excellence, we did add the word accountability here, and this reflects that we see diversity as a strength and that we leverage that strength in everything we do, and that we are continuously improving our stewardship processes and practices. That's fiscal, environmental, and social. And finally, respect, that we treat everyone with kindness, civility, we act with courage and humility, and a great deal of accountability. So with that, I am very happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks very much, Christy. We appreciate that overview, and open it to questions or comments before we look for a motion. All right, seeing none, a motion is in order.
I move that we adopt these suggested changes. I compliment the staff on making them. I think directionally, it's absolutely the right thing to do. Very consistent with what I see regarding the ESG policies in most of the private sector. So I think this is right. So I do move that we adopt and support that these changes.
I'll second.
And I second that motion.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the thoroughness of those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the motion maker as Commissioner Adams and the second as Commissioner Hall. Any further comments? Is there anyone on the commission wishing to vote against this motion? Anyone on the commission that wishes to abstain from voting? All right, seeing none, Chair calls this as unanimous approval of resolution number 10. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is discuss and act on proposed resolution number 11, tolling operations and maintenance. We had a lengthy workshop on this yesterday. It's the IAA. Nick?
Thanks, Chair Stewart. Yet back in 2016, the HPD board and the Transportation Commission agreed on a methodology on how CDOT seeks reimbursement from HPT on the operations and maintenance they perform for us on our express lanes. It was based on a pro rata share of the total number of cars on the entire corridor. So say, for example, on I-25, we had 100,000 cars over a 6-month period, and 15% of those were in the express lane. We'd owe CDOT $15,000. And over the last, even that was when we had 68 lane miles of express lanes in operation, and with 115 express lane miles in operation right now, and 223 slated to be open by the end of 2024. Between HPD and CDOT, we wanted to proactively find a better way to reimburse CDOT for all of the great work they do for us. So based on that, we actually flipped the fee-for-service model that we have CDOT reimburse HPDE for, that we will now reimburse CDOT for that. Actually prepay them based on a scope of work that CDOT gives us on a bi-yearly basis. Based on 3 different areas of work that they do for us in terms of roadway maintenance, operational support, and ITS maintenance and monitoring. We think between John and his team and the HPT team, we think this is a fair and equitable way to reimburse CDOT for all the great work they do for us on our express lanes, and to keep them operational and running as our users expect after using the express lane system. Happy to answer questions you might have, and if not, I ask for your approval of resolution 11.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, a motion to approve is in order.
I so move.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Is there anyone on the commission that wishes to vote in opposition to the motion? Is there anyone on the commission that wishes to abstain from the vote? All right, seeing none, chair calls this as unanimous approval of resolution number 11. The next one is a companion piece, discuss and act on proposed resolution number 12, which is the CDOT HPTE audit IAA, and that's Nick as well.
Thank you, Chair Stewart. Actually, HPD is not involved in this interagency agreement. It's just between CDOT and the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, or OEDIT. OEDIT will be reimbursing CDOT for their $10 million or $15 million contribution to the Burnham Yard property acquisition. Under the interagency agreement, which actually the EDC approved about an hour and a half ago, CDOT has to, after we acquire the property, CDOT has to notify OEDIT and ask for the $7.5 million. It is a 12-month interest-free loan that we can repay at any time without penalty. If the loan is not repaid or paid back in the year, the EDC can extend for another year, interest-free or at a reasonable interest rate that we agree upon together. If it's not paid back within that 2-year period, or if we actually can actually request to be turned into a grant in exchange for a percentage of net proceeds from the sale of the non-transportation related parcels after HPT pays back its bank loan obligation and abides by the revenue sharing provision in the purchase and sale agreement with the Union Pacific Railroad. At the EDC meeting this morning, Jeff Kraft, the chair, the director, or this deputy director, excuse me, of OEDIT, said that they expect to get federal stimulus funds to reimburse them for that $7.5 million, and would expect to turn this $7.5 million contribution to the Burnham Yard acquisition as a grant. Happy to answer any questions you might have. If not, I ask for your approval of resolution number 12.
Thank you. So just clarify, it's resolution number 12, CDOT and OEDIT IAA. Any questions or comments? All right. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I so move.
All right. So Commissioner Gifford was the motion maker, and Commissioner Vasquez, will you be the second?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. Any questions or comments? Is there anyone on the commission who wishes to vote in opposition to this motion? Is there anyone on the commission who wishes to abstain from the vote? All right, seeing none, chair calls that as unanimous approval of resolution number 12. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Number 18 is recognitions. Are there any recognitions to be done?
No, not this month.
Thank you. Under other matters, there are 2 items. The first one is chair appoints nominating committee for chair, vice chair, and secretary. As you know, the changing of the guard happens in July. And so in June, we'll make changes, but we need an nominating committee, and I'm appointing Commissioner Brackey, Commissioner Vasquez, and Commissioner Adams to be the nominating committee for the next chair, vice chair, and secretary. And you can organize yourselves on that, and I'm happy to enter into that discussion with you if you'd like some direction on that. And then the second is the chair is establishing an ad hoc committee that will be called the Agency Coordination Committee. And I'm appointing Commissioner Hickey as the chair of that committee, and other members of that committee will be Commissioner Tebow and Commissioner Vasquez. And with that, I believe that that's all the business we have in front of us as the Transportation Commission. We'll go into the Bridge Enterprise Board of Directors meeting now. We are adjourning the Transportation Commission, and we will call the Bridge Enterprise Board of Directors meeting to order, and I'll ask Herman to.
Commissioner Chair Stewart, this is
Yes.
Kathleen. Can I ask a quick question? I tried to put it in the chat, but I wasn't quick enough. I was wondering if, before we transition to the Bridge Enterprise meeting, if someone could just follow up with us and let us know which of the RAISE grants CDOT is planning to pursue, that would be helpful. I'm getting a lot of questions about that, and it would be really helpful realizing that we're only, I think they're due in July. So if there's a way to just send us an email or something about that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone who can speak to that request?
Sure, I can take a crack at it. This is Herman. We're looking at 2 RAISE grants. We haven't come to commission yet because as things continue to sort out, we've actually shifted back on a few things a couple of times. We're looking at 2 RAISE grants, and I'm going to ask if anybody else is on that can correct me if I get this wrong. But we are looking at a mobility hub with some other perhaps corresponding improvements in Grand Junction. We had originally, had we come to you this month or last month, we probably would have mentioned that as a planning grant. We're looking instead as being actual construction for that. mobility hub and potentially some other corresponding community improvements. And then we're also looking at 1 or 2 mobility hubs on the I-25 corridor, perhaps looking at State Highway 119 and State Highway 7. We're still sorting that out. As you all know, when we have to define what the project is and have a positive cost benefit, and we start looking at that, sometimes projects shift a little bit and we look at what the matches are and things like that. So we're still in the fairly early stages of those 2, but those are the ones that we would expect to bring to you next month for information or approval if we're asking for additional match from the commission.
Great, thank you so much. That's really helpful.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And with that, we will I'll call it as an adjournment for the Transportation Commission at 10:53, and we'll enter into the Bridge Enterprise Board of Directors meeting. And Herman, would you mind calling roll, please?
Director Gifford. Director Gifford.
Oh, I said here. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Director Stanton.
Here.
Director Adams.
Present.
Director Brackey.
Here.
Director Vasquez.
Here.
Director Zink.
She waved.
Hey. Director Hickey.
Here.
Director Tebow.
Here.
Director Beatty.
Here.
Vice Chair Hall.
Here.
Chair Stewart.
I'm here. Thank you very much. First order is public comments. Were there any public comments directed toward the Bridge Enterprise Board of Directors?
No, we have not received any.
Thank you. Is there anyone on the call that wishes to speak as a public commenter? No? All right, thank you. The first order then is act on consent agenda, which is proposed resolution BE1 to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 15th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I move to approve. Gary Beatty.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further comments? Anyone wishing to vote in opposition of approval of the consent agenda? Anyone wishing to abstain from the vote? All right, seeing none, the consent agenda is approved unanimously. Number 4 is discuss and act on proposed resolution BE2, which is the Bridge Enterprise 7th budget supplement for FY21. Jeff?
Hello, I'm requesting your approval of the 7th supplement to the fiscal year 21 Bridge Enterprise budget. The 7th supplement includes 3 requests. The first is a request to approve $1,625,000 in faster bridge funding for 30% design of the I-70 eastbound over Polk Creek structure in Eagle County in Region 3. That's an element of the much larger Vail Pass project. And this is a top tier structure in the January 21 Bridge Enterprise prioritization plan. The second is a request to establish the design phase budget for US 6 over Elk Creek in Garfield County in Region 3 with $526,600 in faster bridge funds. This is also a top tier structure. The third request is a request to establish the design phase budget for the Holyoke Bridge Bundle in Region 4, which is composed of 3 BE eligible structures in Phillips and Sedgwick counties, and to establish that design phase budget with $966,700 in faster bridge funds. 2 of those structures are classified as top tier structures, and 1 is classified as a second tier structure. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'd request you consider a motion to approve.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, a motion is in order.
Gary Beatty, I move to approve.
Barbara Vasquez, I second.
Thank you very much. So motion to approve resolution BE number 2. Is there any further discussion? Anyone on the board of directors wishing to vote in opposition to the motion? Anyone on the board of directors wishing to abstain from the vote? All right, seeing none, that's a unanimous approval of resolution number BE2. Thank you. The next order of business is discuss and act on proposed resolution BE3, Central 70 bonds, and that's Keith Stefanik.
Good morning, directors. This is a follow-up to a resolution that was in front of the board, a joint session between the board and HPTE last month. So pursuant to resolution BE 2021-04-05, which was adopted by the BE board on April 14th of 2021, the BE board approved assisting Kiewit Meridian Partners with incurring additional debt with respect to the Central 70 project by issuing bonds. Pursuant to that resolution, the BE board approved selling the bonds to RBC and Barclays as the underwriters of the bonds pursuant to the bond purchase agreement, which is entered into and among the Bridge Enterprise, KMP, and the underwriters. Since the prior resolution was approved, KMP has approached Bridge Enterprise with an alternative to selling the bonds to the underwriters that would instead provide for selling the bonds only to Barclays or an affiliate, or RBC and an affiliate, as the sole underwriter or initial purchaser of the bonds. Staff and KMP will work with Barclays and RBC to determine which alternative to sell is in the best interest of both parties. Staff hereby request that the BE board approve this resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding this request. I also, joining me today is Michael Thomas and Thomas Y of QTAC Rock, of which is the BE's bond counsel. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Nick.
Did you call I couldn't understand you.
Yes, Commissioner Zink.
Yes. Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand this, because the same parties were involved, but it's a difference between whether then Barclays and the other one could then sell those bonds on to somebody else as opposed to holding them. Is that, do I understand that right?
I believe so, but to best answer that question, I'll defer over to Michael Thomas. Michael, if you want to answer
that. Sure, Keith. Yes, Commissioner Zink. So yeah, what is going on here is that actually the original idea was for RBC and Barclays to underwrite the deal. They would normally do, they would agree to purchase the bonds, and then they would have buyers, the big mutual funds, the Nuveen's and that type of thing is who they would normally sell it to. Barclays and RBC have approached the developer KMP and said, we think we can move this deal along quicker if we just simply buy the bonds from you. We'll actually put our balance sheet, they'll buy them, put our balance sheet behind them, hold them on our books for at least a time being. And now they may eventually sell them off to people, but that's the idea. They will put it on their books. We can move quicker, and then they'll just buy the bonds from the Bridge Enterprise. And one of the advantages of this is that we don't have the marketing period. So when you do a normal underwriting, you've got what we call a preliminary official statement. You go out and you market it for a couple of weeks, and you find buyers and that type of thing. But Barclays and RBC, interest rates have been moving a little bit on us out there, and so KMP is getting a little bit nervous on some of the interest rates. They'd like to keep it as low as possible. So Barclays and RBC have pitched this idea of, well, we can buy the bonds right away. We don't have this 2-week marketing period, and then we can just get the deal done, closed, lock in the interest rates, and move on. So that's kind of the proposal.
Good. Oh, thank you. That makes sense.
Okay.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? All right. Motion is in order.
So moved. Zink.
Thank you.
Second, Stanton.
All right, Director Zink makes the motion. Director Stanton is the second. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none. Is there anyone on the board of directors of the enterprise board, Bridge Enterprise directors who are voting in opposition to this motion? Anyone on the Bridge Enterprise Board of Directors who wishes to abstain from the vote? All right, seeing none. The chair calls that as unanimous approval of resolution number BE3 Central 70 bonds. Thank you.
Thank you, directors.
And finally, we have Bridge Enterprise third quarter FY 2021 quarterly report from Jared Escabel.
Thank you. This is the Bridge Enterprise quarterly report for January, February, and March of this year. We prepare this report quarterly to give you guys an update on the progress the program has made in the quarter. You have heard quite a bit about Central 70 in Floyd Hill, so I'll try to focus this presentation on other aspects of the program. Next slide, please. During this quarter, we made progress on addressing the state's poor bridge population by funding 9 structures for design and 3 structures for construction. The first design project is the 2 structures on I-70 and West 32nd Avenue. This has been a long-standing maintenance burden on both CDOT and the traveling public. It requires sometimes planned and sometimes unplanned emergency repairs on the deck every couple of years. Typically, these rehabs can last up to 5 years, but on a corridor like I-70, heavily freight, heavily traveled, these repairs sometimes only last up to 2 years, sometimes even less than that. The second project in design that we funded is the 7 timber structures in the Eastern Plains Bridge Replacement Bundle in rural areas of Eastern Colorado that covers both Region 1 and Region 4. Construction funding was also approved for 2 projects. The first one, I-25 in South Academy in Region 2, and I-70 in Forest Road in Region 3. In total, just this quarter, $44 million was budgeted. Next slide, please. The program is operating at near historic levels with 31 active projects rehabilitating or replacing 72 structures. And this addresses about 1 million square feet of deck area statewide. As you can see through the map, we do address based on merit, not on location. But if you take into consideration the percentage of bridges that are attainable through the program, we do have pretty good state equity. For example, Region 1 has 32% of the active Bridge Enterprise projects, which mirrors pretty closely the 35% in Region 1 that are unprogrammed. Even if you look at Region 5, there's 2 active projects right now, but Region 5 only has 5 attainable projects within the program. So statewide, we wanted to show this map. We are still having pretty good statewide equity that mirrors the percentages of projects that are reachable through the program. Next slide, please. This quarter, BE also supported the development of the infra grant application for the I-270 corridor safety and mobility project. In March, the board approved a resolution to commit up to $90 million in BE funds to address the bridges for this project. The deck area would be about 110,000 square feet of deck area to be replaced for this project. The structures on I-270 corridor are among the highest priority in the state based on their current condition. Next slide, please. We wanted to give you a few photos that just came up this last weekend on 270 that are impacted in that infra grant application. This is a emergency repair on I-270 and State Highway 265. Next slide. As you can see, emergency repairs on I-270 have become more frequent over recent years, and this is not an isolated incident. Kind of like what I mentioned earlier on I-70 and West 32nd, on these high volume, high freight corridors, these emergencies like this happen pretty frequently. Next slide. These repairs would only be expected to last about 2 years on this heavily used corridor. On more rural, less traveled roads, sometimes repairs like this can last 5 years or longer, but on roads like 270, that's just not the case. Next slide. Staff Bridge is looking at options for longer term temporary repairs on this particular corridor of 270 that will keep it operational for hopefully 5 years or longer until they can be replaced. But this is just a good example to show you of the need of the replacement of the bridges on this corridor. Next slide. It just is more of the finished work. Next slide. And there's the patch right there. Next slide. There, and these repairs, sometimes this is a look at the underside. They usually put some sheet under there, painted sheet, to more for aesthetic look. So with a traveling public underneath, don't look above and see, you know, the repairs that are in the works. It kind of looks a little more finished. And just wanted to give you guys a visual representation of the condition of 270 and why it's so important to have these in that infra grant and repaired here soon. This is just an update. I don't have any approvals needed from the board, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks so much, Jared. We have Commissioner Stanton.
Jared, I really appreciate your showing us the visuals of the bridge infrastructure and what crews are doing on a weekly basis are striking. Also, the safety factor, these crews are exposed when they're out there. I know we try to protect them, but what you're doing is absolutely vital. So we really appreciate your team's work. And as somebody who commuted over that section of 270 on a weekly basis, I was very aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jared. It's scary to see underneath those bridges, and appreciate the work you and your group do on these bridges. So much of what we have to put money into isn't that exciting piece, but the necessary piece, and really appreciate that. Any further comments before we adjourn the meeting? All right, any other business to come before the Bridge Enterprise Board of Directors? Seeing none, I'll adjourn this meeting and remind us all that we have the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission virtual lunch following this. And my understanding that we just stay on this Zoom, is that right, Jennifer?
Yes, that's correct. And the Front Range Passenger Rail group should be joining.
Yes. All right, that sounds great. So we're right on time. Thank you, everyone. And we'll let everyone go who is not in on this meeting, and we'll welcome the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission. And as soon as we get this rounded out here, we'll start our virtual lunch. Typically, we would buy you guys lunch. So, sorry.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. This is Jim Suby, and I just want to report that I'm on board and here, and I expect a number of our commissioners will be joining us if they're not already on board.
That sounds great. And Jim and I had a chance to talk yesterday about the run of show, and I think if everyone's acceptable to this, we will have, once everyone's on, we'll have the transportation commissioners by district introduce themselves, and then Jim can have the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission introduce themselves. And then I understand that David Singer and Spencer Dodge have a presentation for us that might generate comments and questions. So we're really excited to have you here. We appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. I think it's been well over a year since we met. The last time we met in reality, not in in virtual meeting. And so a lot of things have changed over that last year. So I think, do you think, Jim, everyone's here? We can get started?
I think we should get started regardless because of the present, the fact that we have a presentation. And I'll be talking a little bit about our legislation as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
So may I,
yes,
you want to start
please.
introductions now then? Thank you.
Is that all right? Yes. All right. So just want the Front Range Rail Commission to know that we have 11 transportation commissioners that have been appointed by the governor that represent different areas of our state. And we would like to introduce who we are to each of you and then hear who each of you are. And I'll start. I'm Karen Stewart. I'm the chair of the commission for just one more month. I represent District 4, which is Boulder County, Brumfield County, and Adams County. And if we can go to District 1 and then through, that would be great. So get started with Shannon, please.
I represent District 1, which is Denver, and I'm the chair of the High Performance Transportation Enterprise Board, also for one more month, and then I'll be leaving the commission altogether, sadly. Happy to get a chance to meet you, and I have a couple questions for you once we get done with introductions. Thanks. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm Don Stanton. I'm a Region 2, Jefferson County, live in Arvada, and I chair the Innovative Mobility Committee on TC.
I'm Eula Adams. I have District 3, which would be Arapahoe and Douglas County. I'm also interested very much in the topic of mobility, mass transit, and other matters along that line. So I'm very interested in hearing how where you are with your progress.
Great. I guess I'll go next. I'm Kathleen Brackey. I'm the Transportation Commissioner for District 5, which includes Larimer, Weld, and Morgan counties, and very interested in the Front Range passenger rail conversation. So thank you for being here today.
I'm Barbara Vasquez, Transportation Commissioner for District 6, which is 7 counties in Northwest Colorado, and very interested in multimodal transportation, and you're a big part of that. Thank
you. And I'm Kathy Hall, and I'm Commissioner District 7. I have 11 counties starting at the Utah state line all the way to the Eisenhower Tunnel and on the middle part of the western Colorado.
Hi, I'm Sydney Zink, Commissioner for District 8, which is 13 counties. Would you like me to name them alphabetic? No, in Southwest Colorado. So I have a lot of counties, but not so many people. So even though it's pretty far removed from me, I'm very interested in the light rail and the other possibilities with rail. So I'll be interested to hear what we have to learn.
Hi, I'm Lisa Torman Hickey, Commissioner for District 9, which is Fremont, Park, Teller, and El Paso counties. And I'm thrilled that you could join us today.
Hello, I'm Bill Tebow. I live in Pueblo. I'm on the commission representing 10 counties. Most of them are in southern Colorado and southeast Colorado.
And I'm Gary Beatty, District 11, the Northeast 9 counties. I've been on the commission for 2 years. Thanks.
Right, I think that's all of us. Jim,
I
I'll
count
hand it
11.
over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is James Suby. I go by Jim Suby. I am the chair of the Southwest Chief and Front Range Passenger Rail Commission, and I am the governor's appointee as an advocate for passenger rail.
I think you muted yourself when you were trying to add to your comment.
Oh, no, I just was, I muted myself. I was going to ask my other commissioners to introduce themselves, please.
Hi, this is Phil Rico. I am the mayor of the city of Trinidad. I'm also on the Southwest Chief Amtrak or Front Range Passenger Rail Commission representing the South Central Council of Governments.
Hi, this is Jill Gabler. I represent the Pikes Peak COG in Colorado Springs. It's great to be here today.
So hi, I'm Jacob Rieger. I'm the Long Range Transportation Planning Manager at the Denver Regional Council of Governments, DRCOG, and I represent DRCOG on the Southwest Chief and Front Range Passenger Rail Commission. Pleased to be here today. Thank you.
I'm Becky Carrasco. I'm the Transportation Planning Director with the North Front Range MPO, which covers portions of Larimer and Weld County, and I represent the North Front Range on the commission.
Hi, my name is Dale Steenbergen. I'm known, I guess, as the Wyoming interloper on the Front Range Rail Commission as a non-voting member. So I'm happy to be here today and look forward to hearing the conversation.
Jim, I think you have a couple of other commissioners who aren't able to join us today. Can you just tell us who they represent?
Yes. First of all, my vice chair, and I'm very sorry he can't be here, who's been handling our legislation, and I'll carry that for him today. I just spoke with him and he is unfortunately tied up at the legislature. Aren't we all, of course? But that's Sal Pace from Pueblo. And then Chris Wiseman is from Pueblo, who is a county commissioner for the Pueblo County Commission. Nathan, Nathaniel Nathan, who's our Union Pacific representative, and DJ Mitchell, who is our BNSF Railway Commissioner, and Bill Van Meter, who is our RTD representative, can't be here today, and I apologize on behalf of them, all of them, especially Sal, because he was prepped to give us the brief on the legislation and feel sorry he can't do that now, but nevertheless, we'll cover it for him. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I should kick this off. Is that right? Okay, well, let me first say thank you for having us. And I enjoyed my lunch last time I was over there, and I'm sorry we're not going to get to eat lunch together, but I'm looking forward to this conversation. As you mentioned, we'll have a briefing from our very able staff. We've been briefing all of the Front Range groups since we do have legislation now before the legislature. And they'll provide a update where we stand right now. I will then present information about the legislation and where it stands over at the Capitol. And then I'm hoping we can open this up to discussion and questions and answers from your commissioners and comments from our commissioners. So I'm looking forward to a really productive day, and I very much appreciate joining you. And with that, let me turn it over to David and Spencer for their presentation, which is a series of slides. It won't take too long.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Commissioners. It's great to be back with you and to bring these two bodies together. There is a shared interest in Front Range mobility, so we're happy to convene that and facilitate. Next slide, please. My name is David Singer. I'm the CDOT Passenger Rail Program Manager, and I'll turn it over to Spencer Dodge, who is the Rail Commission Liaison. We'll introduce these 5 topics. Certainly there could be others discussed, but this is really what has been our focus. And we'll get out of the way and let you dig into this and a little bit more. But next slide. I just wanted to reiterate CDOT's role as a part of a blended team. We've been kind of the engine for the Rail Commission, providing resources, grant administration, subject matter expertise, and helping define the project, helping to advance the charge of the legislation. That is creating a vision, providing an environmental scan, seeing where the sensitive resources are, using our statewide transportation model to see how it might perform and who might use it, doing some conceptual engineering and putting some costs associated with each of these alternatives, but doing a understanding the trade-offs of the different alignments and potential service plans that the Rail Commission is trying to flush out. That's really what we've accomplished to date, but there is more work to be done. And so on the column to the right is really where the next couple of years at a glance is where our focus will be. The Southwest Chief, we're doing an expansion of service, just kicking off last week with our consultant team to see how we might be able to expand services from La Junta to Pueblo north to Colorado Springs, connecting the southern communities to the communities to the north. And that will keep us busy for the next 12 months, working very closely with Amtrak and BNSF and UP. The second bullet is about not the long-term full 24 trains, but really doing a simulation to see how we can interoperate on existing tracks, existing freight alignment, nominal amount, 3 to 6 trains, a starter service. And I'll talk more about that and the role RTD has in that. But those are 2 federal CRISI grants from FRA that we've received. And so CDOT will be providing grant administration for those 2 projects. The next 2 bullets, we need to understand short-term funding for the Rail Commission as it advances service development planning, and also understanding a sustainable long-term funding source. And then, of course, the last bullet refers to the district bill, which Jim will be talking about. Next slide. So I mentioned the current technical work of identifying how Front Range Passenger Rail might be able to interoperate with freight on this existing tracks. It's a lower investment, and it's what's been done across the country to services that are looking to start. RTD is looking at something very similar for its Northwest Rail peak service plan for those 40 miles. And so there's a shared interest. Our party, CDOT, the Rail Commission, and RTD believe that there is a win-win here in delivering a shared operating plan. And so we are working on a cooperative agreement. It's substantially complete. I think in concept, everyone buys off with it. And we hope to have that executed in the next month. It's a very high level agreement that just pledges us to work together on all aspects of this partnership. Public information, stakeholder engagement, engineering, operations, environmental, so that there is not a duplication of effort, and touch points within the 2 teams. If you look in the box on the right, there is a lot to build on. There's a foundation. We're looking to provide a mode choice and a reliable trip. We're looking in the same alignment. It's the same major populations that we're trying to serve. The engineering and design and environmental work is similar, and the players we need to work with are similar too. I think to scope out that box on the right is potential pain points that we need to resolve. What are the implications of having multiple operators in the same place or multiple technologies? These are the challenges that our teams need to work together on in order to provide a single operating system, a local and an express, so to speak. Next slide, please. Oh, this is where I'll turn it over to Spencer to talk about the current legislation.
Okay, thank you, David. Again, my name is Spencer Dodge. I'm the liaison with the Southwest Chief and Front Range Passenger Rail Commission. And I think the idea for this slide is to just kind of read off the information and let you guys have a conversation when we get to the end of this presentation. So Senate Bill 238, which has just passed through, and actually that's a little outdated. It's passed through the Senate and has been calendared for its House committee hearing, next week. So it's moving through the Capitol. And really what this bill does is lays out some of the powers for a future Front Range Passenger Rail District. Methods of finance, design, or instruction to design, construct, operate, and maintain a passenger rail system. It lays forth district boundaries and kind of that board of directors representation. And it converts this current rail commission towards the end of this year, it'll convert that into a new district and transfer any remaining funds that we have to get that kind of district started. So again, I think we just kind of want to lay this out as a conversation point to have, but I think we've got 2 more slides and we can probably come back. I think Jim would like to talk more on that. Additionally, one of the things we're tracking here is Amtrak. They've laid forth their Amtrak Connects Us proposal for kind of future service development throughout the country. And the Front Range Passenger Rail Corridor is one of those services that they'd like to implement. And so it's looking, they're talking about doing 3 different daily trips from Fort Collins to Pueblo, and then also adding in 1 additional trip all the way up to Dale up in Cheyenne. They're kind of estimating about 196,000 riders per year in 2035. They've been a big partner so far. We kind of helped assist this, and we're working with them closely to kind of coordinate our planning efforts and theirs. They're a non-voting rail commission member, so they've been involved for a couple of years now, and we really see them as a big partner moving forward, both today and moving forward as a potential operator for any kind of future Front Range passenger rail system. Next slide, please. And then finally, one of the items we wanted to touch is the 2020 RAISE grant application. This candidate project here is to kind of implement positive train control and do some capital improvements on the Southwest Chief passenger rail service in southeastern Colorado near La Junta. Those capital improvements are really upgrading the bolted rail to continuous welded steel rail, I believe, which is Evraz Rail, Colorado Work Crews. We've got BNSF has already committed $5 million, as well as they have contracted out a consultant to put together that application. The Rail Commission, we approved $20,000 in matching funds. I think it was either last month or the month before. And so again, this is a project we've gone for a federal grant a couple times now. Very similar to our build grant last year. That was unsuccessful. So really just kind of dusting that off and going for this project once more to kind of finish up the work that we need to do and improving that Southwest Chief line and ensuring service for the future. Again, those applications are due in the middle of July. And so we can provide updates as we hear them. I do think that's the end of the slides I have, unless somebody snuck one in on me. And so I'll turn it over to Jim Suby, I think, to maybe kind of wrap things up here and maybe kick off a discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Spencer. This is Jim again. Just a little bit of background about Senate Bill 21238, create a Front Range passenger rail district. This bill was introduced in the Senate. It has bipartisan sponsorship, which is very important to us, obviously. It delineates the district as was pointed out. That district includes the major MPOs up and down the Front Ranges and councils of government. It creates a board of 17 voting members and 6 non-voting members. 10 of the voting representatives, 10 of the voting members represent the MPOs and councils of government. 2 from the North Front Range, 4 from the DRCOG region, 2 from the Pikes Peak region, 1 from the South Central Council of Governments, and 1 from the Pueblo Council. The 6 non-voting members include Amtrak, and by the way, I failed to mention Rob Eaton, who is the Amtrak member of the commission, non-voting, and I apologize for that. It includes the 2 major freight railroads, the Union Pacific Railroad and the BNSF Railway. It includes RTD, and essentially we're hoping, and it includes representatives from New Mexico and Wyoming as well, at the pleasure of their governors. Those non-voting members are appointed, by the way, 1 voting member from, obviously from CDOT as well. That rounds up to 10. The non-voting members are there for their rail expertise. We're hoping, it's not required that they be appointed, but we're hoping that the railroads and the other entities will appoint their representatives to make sure that we have solid professional information to deal with. And essentially that's the way the bill stacks up. The appointments as it stands now would be made by December, and the commission would meet in May 2022. This is subject to change. Obviously, this bill is still under consideration. It was passed 25-10. in the Senate, and it is before the House Transportation and Local Government Committee as we speak. I think the first hearing comes up next Tuesday. And we'll see what they have to say about it. The initial bill received a number of amendments, or we worked with a number of the MPOs to make a number of amendments to satisfy their interests, which were very important. We want this bill to be accepted as much as possible up and down the Front Range, of course. And with that, I guess I would prefer to turn it over to Q&A rather than go on. We could talk about the legislation's complex. It creates a very powerful district, and that district would have taxing authority. It would have all the other authorities that are necessary. We examined legislation in 7 other states that was recommended to us to see what powers ought to be afforded to a governance organization for a passenger rail system. And thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I'll turn it over to Q&A, unless there are any other commissioners who want to speak to this issue here from the Rail Commission.
Right. Well, thanks very much for that presentation. I'm sure there's lots of questions here. So who wants to start us off? Okay, Commissioner Zink.
Thank you. First, I think I embarrassed myself by referring to light rail, but you know, I'm a country bumpkin. What happens, what's the plan if this legislation does not pass? Or are you, I would think you'd be fairly confident that it will.
Well, we're confident that it will, primarily because it has great popular support. The public in the Front Range counties overwhelmingly support passenger rail. 85% say yes, and over 61% say they would pay sales tax to generate revenue to pay for its construction. That's not to say that they've looked at a ballot measure, Commissioner, and responded to that. This was a bipartisan survey of a number of voters up and down the Front Range. So obviously the big hurdle for this commission, or for the new district board, will be developing all the arguments and all the background information necessary to convince the public that it is something useful to pay for. In my opinion, the Amtrak support is extremely important. They are working with Congress to try to create a way to fund rail startups that, as you might imagine, and you know this from any large infrastructure project, those startup costs are the biggest barrier. Most states see that once they have the system operating, it grows. And the public is very satisfied to have it and they use it. But that takes a few years to market the system and develop more frequent service and things like that. I'll say 2 other things. The new board will be required to do a NEPA analysis, and for the Federal Railroad Administration, develop a service development plan. This will lay out for the public where stations would be, how fast the trains would run, what kind of frequency would we have, would it be phased in over time? All of these are requirements of the federal government in order to qualify for federal funding, and they're also requirements in our current legislation. One other thing about the legislation, in that we have a provision that says we must be competitive with other modes, which is very important. We don't want to build a system that can't compete and get more people on board. With that, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you. I wish you luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brackey, then Commissioner Adams, and Commissioner Hickey.
Great. Thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to condense down my questions because there's a lot of them, and you've touched on some high level topics here. So again, I think you're right in that there's a lot of interest around the concept of passenger rail and especially this approach to look at how to serve the whole Front Range and do this more holistically and connecting all of our communities. So I guess I'll start with some of the more technical questions and then ask my legislative related questions. So working and living in Northern Colorado for all these years, there's been the North I-25 environmental impact statement that was done almost 10 years ago, or maybe longer. And that did show passenger rail service along the BNSF corridor from Fort Collins to Boulder to Denver. And so I guess I'm trying to understand, how is your work working from that, those years of planning and community expectations around the build out of the EIS? So I'll start with that question, and then I have a follow-up around more the legislative side.
Well, I'll just do it a minute, and then other commissioners or Spencer or David may want to comment. I'm sure they will. With respect to the North I-25 EIS, it was designed to fully fund a 65 train a day service. That's more trains per day than enter and leave Chicago or New York on any one line. So it was an extraordinarily comprehensive proposal. And as a consequence, it generated a response from, as I recall, the BNSF Railway saying, holy cow, if we're going to run that many trains, then we're going to have to put in a whole lot of new track, new sidings, new signaling and everything else, and safety provisions. And so, I think they gave essentially a rule of thumb estimate, but it was a huge amount of money and created a lot of controversy. We learned from that. Our approach is designed to create a very feasible, understandable, and marketable system, something that voters will support through a ballot measure. Let me turn it over to any other commissioner or to Spencer or David if they'd like to comment. I don't know that I answered your full question. I'm sorry.
I'll just say,
I'm hearing you.
Jim, if you could mute, thank you. I'll just say that this is knowing that the Front Range has explored the idea of passenger rail for generations. We weren't started from scratch. And so we were very sensitive to leverage past plans, existing plans, and follow those to the extent those assumptions are still true. The North I-25 EIS had a follow-up commuter rail update, I think 5 years later, to refresh that. And it reiterated that the alignment for there is still valid. So we continue to talk with and lean pretty heavily on the North Front Range, MPO, and those communities to make sure that this still aligns with their long-term rail vision.
Okay, thanks. I do think in your materials, as you're out presenting this to different audiences, particularly in the northern part of, north of Denver, it would help for people to understand what you are building upon and what has come before, and then how this connects with that, or does or doesn't, so that there's more clarity, again, for not only policymakers, but also for the public at large. I think that would certainly be helpful for me. The other piece of information I didn't see in the presentation that I think would be helpful to know is the time frame. You mentioned, and then how do these things layer together? There's the work that you all are doing and have been doing as this commission. What does that time frame look like, again, with or without this bill passing? And then what are those federal requirements that you mentioned around NEPA? I mean, are we on the front end of a 10-year process, on the front end of a 5-year process? What does the whole thing look like? And what journey are we on? I think would be really helpful for all of the different audiences to see, because not everyone's been tracking this as closely as others. And then with the legislation that was recently introduced, it's generated a lot of it's caught a lot of people by surprise, and so a lot more questions are coming forward than perhaps was anticipated. So I guess I'm a holistic view type person, and I think what I'm hearing from others, it would be helpful to see.
Yes, very important points. Some of these questions we can't answer in great detail right now without the service development plan in hand and without NEPA clearance.
Right,
So,
but people need to understand when that work will come.
Yeah,
and who will
well,
pay
let me
for
comment
that
on
work,
that.
and how do the pieces of the puzzle fit together? Because shifting gears to my question on the legislative side, people are really worried. And I think the amendments that have been made to increase representation on the new commission are really important, because people were starting to feel and fear that there was, and you mentioned the ability for the district for taxation. There's the whole like fear of taxation without representation, right? And that has set a lot of people nervous about this. So I think people need to understand what this is, both on the technical side, the legislative side, and the financial side, and how does it all fit together, and how is it being done in a way that's very open and transparent and creates more understanding about it,
Yes.
rather than the fear and surprise that some people are reacting to right now. But I appreciate all the work. I know it's not easy, and it's been a long time in the process, and certainly I want to support you know, interregional and statewide passenger rail and transit. So please know I'm not asking these questions to be challenging. I'm trying to ask them on behalf of a lot of people, that other people that I hear from that have questions and concerns.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you know, we did the current commission, the Southwest Chief and Front Range Passenger Rail Commission, did vote and publicize a preference to use the BNSF railway alignment, one of the three that we examined. We don't have the authority, without the NEPA clearance and without the FRA approval, to select a final candidate. So under the NEPA review, we will still be looking at those alternatives as well as other modes. And we'll be presenting that information. I do know one of our goals is to speed up. I served on a national commission on NEPA. The average large infrastructure project took 5.4 years to complete its NEPA clearance. It was astounding. What we're trying to do is, and I'll let our professional staff comment on this, but what the commission would like to do is combine the NEPA review and the service development plan review, which in effect they can comment on, but that's what's led to what we've presented today, and try to get this done in 3 or 4 years, not 5.5 or 6 years, which is what a lot of these projects have required. So that begins to lay out a timeline. The problem with giving a more defined timeline at the present, is that we don't know how many stations we might have. We haven't looked at and modeled, and David can comment on this, but we haven't modeled how we would operate on any of these particular rights of way, and what kinds of projects we'd have to undertake in order to meet our requirements to be competitive and to deliver a service that people would use. So, you know, this puts in, I know I talk, and I know David and Spencer talk to people, and all of our commissioners talk to their groups all the time about these questions, and we just can't give definitive answers at the present time. And this legislation will put us in a position to do so. It'll put us in a position to obtain additional federal funding to carry out NEPA analysis. It'll put us in a valid position to actually build a rail service once we obtain the required clearances. Enough said for me. Let me turn it over to our staff or to any other commissioners who may want to comment.
I will add at a staff level that we have seen the generational NEPA studies, and I think across the country, that's something that we are looking to avoid, and that the US DOT partners have recognized that too. So they've said, do your homework and come to us with a defined concept before you start NEPA. In fact, they won't even let us start until we can demonstrate that we've done the homework that we've laid out and we can prove a viable system. And once NEPA does start, I think Colorado, especially DOT, has proven that we are using every tool in the toolbox to streamline. We've been recognized for moving quickly. And many of the other DOTs are looking to us to try to be nimble. our planning and environmental linkage program has been recognized as a leader to help focus on those things up front and not get ahead of ourselves and be lean and mean for when NEPA does start. But we are trying to compel that mindset of FRA. We anticipate that they would be the lead agency, not FHWA. So it's different dynamic and different partners for that next phase.
Okay, thanks. I have other questions, but I want to leave room for others first.
Thank you, Commissioner Brackey. Stacking order is Commissioner Adams, Hickey, and Stanton.
My question is, I'm curious about your existing or planned agreements with freight rail, and what can you tell us about the details of what those arrangements will look like, and how will it, what's your expectation of how you'll minimize the inconvenience or other obstacles that commuters will have, and make sure they're not inconvenienced too much by the freight?
Excellent question. Obviously, that is the primary issue that we'll look at through the service development planning, and the two freight railroads on whose tracks we will probably operate, that is the favored route right now, will participate. David can talk about the sophisticated modeling that's done to determine how to run these trains to meet our requirements. The BNSF Railway has a list of principles for passenger rail service on their right-of-way. We adhere to those. They never fail to remind us that they exist. The main issue with respect to the freight railroads is we cannot impede their customer service. That would be a violation of well, they wouldn't let us get aboard their track if we chose that right-of-way. I'll say one other thing about the Northwest alignment and the BNSF freight right-of-way. The preference was derived because we learned from Amtrak and from the BNSF Railway that is the customary way that Amtrak runs passenger service if they don't own the track themselves. They don't operate trains on new track unless they purchase it and own it. So their statutory authority allows them to obtain a preference from a freight road if they're using that right of way. And so that's what caused us to lean toward the freight railway right of way that I think the other commissioners have mentioned. And we voted to that effect. Some of our commissioners had not yet received support from their organizations. So the vote was among the commissioners who could at that time support that route. But that included the Northwest alignment, RTD alignment, simply because that turned out to be the best alignment in terms of passenger service at a similar cost level. Now, these are high altitude points, so I have to remind everybody again that this is all subject to a NEPA study and to a service development plan that would line out all of these issues and provide us with a lot of the answers that you would like to see today. And we just have to be cautious.
Obviously, you'll be able to model your schedules and other things to fit with their schedules so that there's a minimum amount of disruption, but things happen, and so they do and will. At the present time, then, I'm assuming there is no memorandum of understanding or draft agreement or anything that is to come. Is that correct? Or
that's correct. There's no existing agreement. We have agreements with these railroads with respect to some of the research we have underway. And they have agreed to provide modeling services of their own to help support our analysis. That's happening as we speak. David can speak to that. They have been very cooperative. I have to say, based on all the controversy that arose over the I-25 EIS years ago, we haven't run into that situation at all. We've gotten great cooperation from both railroads, particularly BNSF. We're partners with the BNSF on the Southwest Chief in a number of grants. We've raised $103 million to improve that train's right away. So,
and when you use their right away, is it a fee like a fixed monthly, like a lease agreement, or do you pay them per passenger, or how's the actual
Yeah.
transfer
And
payment?
they receive a payment, they're entitled to and demand and receive a payment for passenger services on their line. It's based primarily on federal statutes. However, for example, the state of California pays a little bit more than the statutory requirement in order to get a higher level of service, which has made their line from San Jose up beyond Sacramento very popular for everybody. And so, you know, these have to be worked out, and they can't be worked out again until we know exactly what kind of service we want to provide. But you're right on target with respect to, it's got to be something that our citizens are willing to ride and pay for. You know, they have to pay the fare, and that means it has to eventually, not in the initial 3 or 4 runs per day as we work out the system, but it has to grow into a system that they can rely on. And it doesn't replace automobiles, it doesn't replace buses, it's part of a system. Another big issue that the commission's concerned with is how we interface with the various municipal transit services up and down the Front Range. That's essential for us to generate the ridership. So, you know, we look at it as kind of a separate system. It's not at all. It's designed to interact with all of the systems, including motorists. And that's the plan we have to work out in detail before we'll take it to the voters.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I have Commissioner Hickey and then Stanton on the queue.
Thank you very much for this discussion. I think actually my questions have been addressed well by Commissioner Brackey and Commissioner Adams. I do want to underline what Commissioner Brackey was saying about lots of questions about taxation and representation and how the funding will work. I think there's a lot of support in my region, the Pikes Peak region, folks on the street, business community, but there are so many questions that there's hesitation and about the bill, and therefore the more education you can do about how that works, even perhaps as an example that's clearly portrayed as an example, but that can give people a visualization how that's going to work going forward. I strongly believe that we're really concrete in our thinking, and that includes local decision makers, and the more visualization you can give people, the better, especially when it comes to the modeling of how the voting would work and how the taxes would work, and then how the funding would be distributed. Thank you very much, though. I find it really exciting, and so do many, many people I talk to around here.
Thanks very much. Commissioner Stanton and then Brackey.
Thank you. James, I really appreciated your talk about a holistic system along the Front Range with municipal transit, buses, et cetera, integrating in. I think it's really a positive message. I too wanted to draw on what Commissioner Brackey and Hickey just said about the financial piece, the fear of taxation. And could you comment a little bit, because I believe recently El Paso County Commissioners and some organization in Douglas County made statements against Front Range Rail, strong statements. And also the other part of that is, once this is established and it goes before the voters in the districts, I understand from Andy Carcian that as long as you have 50.1% support, it will press forward, and that would mean you would be mandating a fee for this, right? Could you explain that a little more?
Yeah, the legislation as it currently stands authorizes this district, if it passes, to levy a sales tax of up to 0.8%.
Right.
Up to. Many people have now, I know El Paso Commission, I watched the video on their proceedings, and of course they jumped to the high end, higher than what we're authorized to do, and objected to that. The key arguments, and quite frankly, that region has been very supportive, the business community has as well, because of the economic benefits that accrue from passenger rail service. They're immense. And I belong to an organization, and we've been dealing with Congress on these issues. And I've shared that information, and we should be sharing it with you folks as well. But the best example here, regardless of problems RTD may have had, getting the Northwest alignment built and all the rest, the economic development arguments have been incredible. I mean, there has been, Denver Union Station is a national success story. And that will be part of the understanding that comes from our research. So it's never easy to, in this state in particular, but anywhere in this country, it's never easy to pass a ballot measure supporting bond issue to construct a transportation infrastructure. The fact of the matter is something like 80% of jurisdictions around the country have supported those tax measures and ballot measures over the past few years, simply because we've reached a stage, as we have in Colorado, where congestion on I-25 in particular, but congestion on our highways has finally become extremely problematic. And some of the other commissioners on this call from the Rail Commission can comment on this, but it's now as expensive, and in some cases more expensive, to expand the highway system than it is to build the passenger rail system, particularly if you have existing infrastructure, as with our preferred route we would on the freight right of way. So these are issues that have to be detailed out so they apply specifically in Colorado and then taken to the voters. And it would be foolhardy for us to take anything, or the new, I shouldn't say us, the new district to take anything to the voters unless they've detailed out, their estimates on these particular issues, and unless we obtain matching federal funds, which I think we'll be in a good position to do. I'd like to ask, I know some of my other commissioners are on this call and know more about the comparative issues, highways versus rail and all the rest. So if they'd like to comment, I'd like to bring them into the conversation.
Mr. Subi, this is Jill Gabler. I'd like to comment if that's okay.
Yeah,
Madam
thank
Chair.
you very much. Thank you.
So, to the question, I represent the Pikes Peak COG, and the COG itself in its legislative session did oppose the bill. And I think it's important to remember that the city of Colorado Springs, which makes up 3/4 of the county of El Paso, is being very supportive. We have not come out in support yet, but we are working with the lobbyists and those who are working on the bill, the bill sponsors, to help us to support it. And I think to the question of representation, taxation without representation, we are trying to maybe modify how the voting goes for a ballot measure that would increase our taxes from a simple majority of the commission to a 2/3 majority. Then it makes it so maybe a coalition of Denver and Boulder can't create a tax that isn't supported by the southern part of the Front Range passenger rail, to include Pueblo and Colorado Springs and even down into Trinidad. So I think there are conversations like that going on right now so that this bill can be more represented by the entire Front Range region. And hopefully those will move forward. I know Boulder's had some opportunity to really modify the bill, and now Colorado Springs is working to also get on board and support that, because we do realize, and we spoke at the Senate's Transportation Committee, that I-25 cannot continue to expand. I spoke to our tourism in Colorado Springs alone. We bring in 100 million from tourism. So many of those folks are coming in from Denver's airport. They want to more and more travel without renting a car. We don't want our only mode to be gridlock. We also have 5 military installations here in the Pikes Peak region, and they are very focused on resiliency and deployability. And we know that I-25 cannot provide the transportation needs for them either. And so the Pikes Peak region is very dependent on this mode, and adding another mode that can be really supportive of ensuring reliable transportation between Colorado Springs and Denver. So I hope that answers some of that taxation question and the support of our region, because I think we're trying really hard to find a way to support and come on board.
Jill, I really appreciate your explanation. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Mayor Phil Rico in Trinidad. And a couple of days ago, I made a presentation to the county commissioners here in Trinidad. After the presentation, They were not in support. And the reason being is the big thing was the taxation portion of it. The city council of the city of Trinidad do support the district, but the big thing was the taxation, and there was a concern there. There was also concern about the eminent domain, and just had to explain to them how eminent domain works. Evidently, they have some issues going back to the 1980s of eminent domain that occurred here in Trinidad. So I was trying to put their mind at ease as to why eminent domain has to stay within that bill. But I just want to let you know that the city of Trinidad itself is in support of this district.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I think a couple of people hit on stuff that I hear as well, and that's the taxation and everything that Mr. Gebler said. It is similar to what we want in north of downtown Denver, and that is to reduce the amount of traffic on I-25. It's at gridlock in many places. Right at Highway 7 and I-25, we have 270,000 cars a day coming through that intersection, and an option to have rail instead would be helpful for so many different reasons, for the congestion and for the safety and for the greenhouse gas emissions reduction, all of that. The way the bill is written that pulls out the special districts, there is no guarantee that people who are taxed will benefit from this rail in the Adams County portion and in the Broomfield portion. And while I think those communities really support regional rail, I think the fear is it's RD all over again. And I have to tell you that stigma of paying for RTD for all these years and not getting the benefit hangs on. And I do believe it hung on for Senate Bill 110 when we tried to get transportation funding. We haven't recently, but we used to do a lot of town halls. And I was amazed at how many people didn't understand that CDOT is not the regional transportation district and vice versa. And I think sometimes people just believe that all transportation is amalgam together, and those of us making decisions make those full decisions. So I do hear, while people are really supportive of regional rail, the provinciality of how those districts get rail is a concern, and I do worry that you won't have the votes because of the taxation without service. And so anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity to hear more of this and to be able to reach out to more communities who have these kinds of questions to give them more information. And I have Commissioner Brackey back on who would like to have some follow-up questions. So thanks very much.
Great, thanks, Chair Stewart. And again, great questions and discussion and among all of us today. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate all of the other questions that have been asked by the commission members. So, and realize there's a lot more to this and a lot more that needs to be developed and refined. I think in all that you're hearing, if you're able to develop that sort of holistic time frame and what are the sequential steps that happen, it would be helpful for people to see when the window of time would be for a vote around this, the taxation or the funding. So again, so people understand it's not necessarily tomorrow that you would be able to answer these questions in advance of asking the public to vote for funding. So again, I think so people could see the questions, that the work that will be coming forward, and then when the subsequent question would be asked. I have two other funding related questions. Hopefully they're pretty straightforward, but it looks like in the state transportation funding bill, there is funding identified for front range passenger rail. And if you could explain what that is specifically identified for. And then you mentioned in the RAISE grant, $20 million coming from the commission. Just curious, where would that funding come from? And is there any funding that would be sought from CDOT or the Transportation Commission?
I'll answer just initially with some thoughts from my perspective here, or the commission's perspective, but I think David and Spencer will talk to the RAISE grant. The funding that's set aside in the, I think 260, Senate Bill 260 is $2.5 million, which is the funding that the commission was given originally in the 2018 budget, and which was used to do the initial analysis that David described, the equivalent of essentially a preliminary environmental linkages study. And that's the 88-page document that we've shared with folks that lays out what we've learned and ended up describing the 3 most feasible possible routes for a front range rail system. And what the legislature has done is has authorized a similar amount now in this bill that would carry us into the more formal NEPA and service development planning activities. And I'll turn it over to David and Spencer now, unless any of my other commissioners in the Rail Commission want to speak to this, but I think they can tell you the planning activities that we have in mind over the next few years, that kind of 3-year window I described for NEPA and service development planning. And David, are you there? Or
yeah,
Spencer?
Jim, you nailed it. I think the Rail Commission, when it was initially formed, had an understanding of what the budget would be required to do this full amount of work, NEPA, district service development plan, and it was given a fraction of that amount as an initial startup. And so this 2.5 is that next installment to meet federal expectations, kind of the cost of doing business to really define that project and do a true compliant alternatives analysis, station area planning, etc. So that 2.5, it's gone towards grants, it's gone towards staff time, surveys, but technical work to bring in the expertise to complement the in-house staff that CDOT has.
Okay, thank you.
David, if I may add on for as far as the grants go. So one note on what David just mentioned, it also went towards matching funds for the 2 cruising grants we currently have, that original $2.5 million that the Rail Commission got. So on the 2021 RAISE grant, that $20,000 from the Rail Commission, their matching funds, that also came from that original $2.5 million. So still trying to capitalize on the money we have and bring in some of those federal dollars. As far as an ask from CDOT, that's not really my place to have that conversation. So I'll turn that to maybe David Singer or one of the other CDOT folks around here.
Thanks, Spencer. That's very generous of you. I can say that the Rail Commission did charge $20,000, pledge $20,000 from their own coffers. And in the 2020 build grant, CDOT pledged $1 million toward that unsuccessful grant.
At the last Transit and Rail Advisory Committee, I serve on that committee for CDOT, that money is still available. It's still set aside to match that grant. The issue has been finding a sponsor. Once the grant was not awarded, then the question became, okay, we need to find a new sponsor and move forward. The importance of that grant, and Mayor Rico may want to comment on this, and perhaps Rick Klein if he's on the call, yes, is it would essentially finish the requirements that Amtrak and BNSF, the technical requirements to provide positive train control and to improve the track for the route of that Southwest Chief train. That's important because it reduces the delays for that train and suddenly puts in play opportunities to do things like reroute the train through Pueblo to Trinidad. Suddenly those things become possible and still meet the Amtrak national schedule between Chicago and Los Angeles. With that, let me turn it over to Rick. I didn't introduce Rick earlier, and I'm glad to see he's on the call because he is the champion of those grants with the BNSF Railway and the Commission and CDOT.
Well, no, but because I do my part, and everybody does their part, and you guys are a major portion of that part and have been. with giving us the $1 million to get those original Tiger grants, build grants. Now here we are on the RAISE grant. And the RAISE grant is the last one to finish off the initial $100 million of improvements along the Southwest Chief Line to save it. And it's been a national effort to do that. And we got the eyes of everybody on us. And when we first started this, like the Southern Rail Commission, the Midwest Rail Commission, they wondered how we stepped in front of them. And it was because we were able to make these decisions and keep the project moving. And here we find ourselves 12 years down the road, finishing off our last grant, for this. But that saves the Southwest Chief. But what does it do, and I understand about the representation and everything, but we're the black hole of mass transit. If we get, if we break the Front Range, from Cheyenne down to Trinidad, we're going to have a north-south and the 6.5 million people that'll do it. It brings the rest of the nation in. It exposes Colorado. It gives us that true mobility that Colorado needs at this point in time. Before we get Colorado Springs going up so far, let's get our rail in there and let's make a system that all of the world, Americans can utilize. So as I know that we got a lot of decisions to make on that Front Range Rail, finishing off the Southwest Chief on this will help create that true mobility that Colorado needs to expand out. Thank you.
This is Phil Rico in Trinidad. And, one of the things is that we've been in on this since 2017, and I've been on the commission since 2018. And I know that City Council is a firm believer in this project and trying to finish this project because it feels essential for the future of Colorado for a variety of reasons. This RAISE grant that is coming up, I will be bringing that to City Council on Monday for approval. We approved the last one, which we did not get, but I will be bringing that to City Council on Monday for that sponsorship. And the reason why we are so indebted to trying to get this done, and I've heard a couple of the people on the commission mention, is we know this is a long range goal. It's not going to be tomorrow. So it's just like some of the people up on the north end. We all need to understand that extending further out of the major metro areas is going to take some time to accomplish. And so from being that we're in such a far end of the southern part of the state, we just feel like it's essential that we try to complete a good rail system from the Wyoming border all the way to the New Mexico border, and the straight line as possible that we can get. But we do know that this is a long-range project, like I said, and like I said, we continue to try to support these grants as they come forward.
Thanks so much. I think we'll try to wrap this up. I have final comments, I think, from Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, it's just a comment that was made, and I'm curious about this. In a previous lifetime, I was involved in some projects looking at high-speed rail along the East Coast, and one of the key questions came up was quality of the rail bed. And so, Jim, I think you made a question about rail bed and maybe some preliminary, and I realize it's probably way too early for you to really have a real assessment, but what's the high-level opinion and what are your plans for the type of rail lines you're going to use for Front Range? Is it going to be the kind of rail systems that would require a serious consideration to the importance of the rail bed and its current quality? And this I learned a long time ago, that rail bed for freight may not be exactly what is suitable for passengers. So what's your thinking on that right now? Is it something that you've got to study as you move to the next steps?
Yeah, it's definitely something we need to study, Commissioner. And an interesting, this whole idea of the freight right of way BNSF Railway started running a high speed for freight, a 70-mile-an-hour intermodal train from Seattle to Houston down our Front Range. And I don't want to speak for the railroad per se. I have to be very cautious about that. But by virtue of the fact that they were running extensive heavy coal traffic and large freight shipments until that kind of traffic began to diminish, has allowed that. We learned a lot from doing the Southwest. First of all, let me start there. We learned a lot from working with the BNSF about how to improve the passenger line running through Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico for the Amtrak Southwest Chief, which is a part of this commission's mission. And so we feel like we're in a pretty good position to work with the railroad to determine what improvements will be required once we understand, once again, what service are we going to provide? What does the public demand in order to ride this train? Again, that's the bottom line. And neither of the freight railroads will let us get away with any other developments until we determine exactly what kind of service we want to provide. They're very adamant about that. Then they go and they're doing it right now. They're doing a model now to look at what would it be like to run a passenger train today with no improvements whatsoever. And, I've seen comments already to the effect that, well, people won't ride it. It won't go fast enough. It won't meet the legislative requirement that it be competitive with any other mode. And that means automobiles on I-25. So again, these questions have to be answered, but we feel like we're in a really much better position than we were back in I-25 EIS years. I was on a North group that worked with BNSF and the other partners in that study. And we just didn't know anywhere near what we know now. As you know, we had really CDOT had just developed a transit and rail division. All of these things were taking place at the same time. I don't want to dwell on this, but once again, the answers are out there. The railroads are cooperating, and I think we'll have them. I want to turn this back over to Commissioner Stewart before a hook comes out of my right side and pulls me out of here. Thank you very much, Commissioner. I appreciate it.
Well, Commissioner Subi, we're excited to have the conversation. I think you're right. Stars are aligned for something to happen with regional rail for the state of Colorado, and it's a great coalition of so many interested parties. And I hope it moves forward in a more rapid pace than I've seen in my career, having worked on things that have taken 20 and 25 years and 30 years and still aren't complete. So really appreciate the optimism. Thank you so much. I would suggest, I'm not going to be the chair after June, but I would suggest that perhaps we do this 6 months from now. And Commissioner Hall, I'll look to you to maybe organize that in the future for us, because I do think that it certainly fits the mission and vision that we have as transportation commissioners for CDOT. So give you the final comments, Commissioner Subi, and thank you very much for taking the time out of your lives today to meet with us. And next time, let's do it in person. And just thank you all for your service. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. We appreciate it. I'm not going to take any more time. We've hit this pretty hard today. I really appreciate the questions and comments we've received from the Transportation Commission. They're extremely important. We'll work them into our presentations. I think the notion that we need to be more explicit about these things is well taken. Some things we can't, and if we can't, we need to explain why, so people have that understanding. And but I am an optimist about this, as you know, and I think we can make this happen. And I think the future is very bright for all the communities, whether they get service out of this initial line or service in the future. Once we get service underway, all kinds of other opportunities are going to arise. So that's what we've seen around the country. And that's, I won't get into it, but there are a lot of great examples happening right now where those nascent passenger services are expanding at a tremendous clip because the people want them. So that's my final comment. Thanks again to everybody for having us.
Thank you, everyone.